Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Kelly was running off her feet, and all Sophia's mom made her do was change her clothes 10 times. No, that's not what the woman was saying. Every time her daughter came out in a different look. And now, what is it that you don't like? Kelly was angry. It's not dignified. Mom, I'm going to be a nurse, not a company director, sighed the girl. Sophia rolled her eyes all the more. The people who hire you need to see that you're responsible about everything, including your choice of costume. And besides, you're not a nurse, you're a nurse. Kelly sighed and went to change. Only when there wasn't much time left. Sophia took pity and let her daughter go. And now the girl with all her legs rushed to the huge elevator, which was to take her to the 15th floor. At the last moment, she managed to slip between the closing doors, which caused disapproving looks of two elderly, luxuriously dressed women. So continued the one in the bright red coat with the little white spits in her arms. I'm saying, Maria, but it's definitely a fake. They didn't have a bag in the original collection in that disgusting brown color. She looked at Kelly, at her shoes, covered in spring mud. What made the girl want to fall through the ground? And I've been saying for a long time, said the second lady in a thin stock coat and large gold earrings, that Maria does not know what Maria Kelly did not know, because at that moment her phone rang loudly. The ladies in the elevator, as if on cue, pressed their lips together and stared at the girl as if she had at least broken the law. Yes, Kelly answered the phone timidly. Kelly, we're expecting you, said the impeccably placed female voice on the other end of the phone. Yes, the girl yelled hurriedly. I'm on my way up. Excuse me, please. Okay, also calmly answered the voice, and a short beep sounded. Fortunately, the elevator stopped at that moment, and Kelly, accompanied by the still disapproving looks of the women, got out. Kelly greeted her Christina, whom she had just spoken to on the phone, with a smile. Good to see you. Hello. Good afternoon. Stuttering with excitement, Kelly said hello. Sorry I'm late. Oh, that's okay, answered Christina. But for future reference, the chief doesn't like it. Kelly nodded vigorously, showing that she understood and that it would not happen again. In the wide hallway, she looked at herself in the mirror and realized that all Sophia's efforts to make Kelly look businesslike and presentable had gone to waste. Next to her in the mirror was Christina, the assistant of the future. If Kelly didn't fail the chief's interview, tall, slender, impeccably ogled white shirt, deliberately carelessly directed in jeans that perfectly lightened slender long legs thick. Brown hair Christina was gathered in a high ponytail on a beautiful precise face light, almost imperceptible makeup. She was probably a little older than Kelly. And in fact, Kelly herself is short, slightly made and ridiculously sitting in a black suit with a long blonde almost to the waist braid, not to give not to take from a fairy tale moved to modernity, and looks here completely out of place. Worried, suddenly asked Christina. From such an unexpected question, the girl did not even have time to lie and sincerely fell out. Yes, very assistant nodded. I understand you, Alex, a man with a difficult character. You, please, take it into account and try not to pay attention to some of his peculiarities. I will, Kelly replied timidly. I read your resume, Christina continued. You have a lot of experience in caring for the most complex patients, so please don't treat him as a person with a difficult character, to say the least, but as just another difficult patient. Kelly did not expect such words at all. After the phone interview, she had imagined Christina to be such a bitch, and she did not expect to hear soft instructions and words of support from her. I'll do my best. Thank you. Christina smiled and nodded. Well, if anything, I'm here for you, and whatever he is, he won't bite. She went somewhere deep into the apartment, opened an invisible door, and asked Alex, "Can I come in?" "Yes," answered a harsh, dry male voice. Christina, back with Kelly. "Let's go." As they walked to the right room, Kelly had time to note how big the apartment was and how everything was adapted for a person with disabilities. Wide doorways on the floor, no powders and other little things that her experienced eye could see. Apparently, the renovations were done specifically for him. Kelly and Christina walked into the spacious, bright room. The first thing that caught their eye was the large panoramic window, which overlooked the city. Second, near the window in a gurney chair sat a man looking about 35 years old. Dark hair, short, stiff stubble. Perhaps you could call him handsome, if it were not for the sharp creases in the corners of his mouth and prickly gray eyes. They didn't look at Kelly kindly. He was probably 6'4" tall, but judging by his build, very thin. That's okay, Kelly thought. I've carried a lot more than that in the hospital. I can handle it. The girl tried to smile and portray a friendliness that she did not feel at all. "Good afternoon," she said quietly. The man did not dignify her with an answer. He only raised his eyebrows and looked questioningly at Christina. She smiled and opened the folder Kelly had taken from her desk. Christina had graduated from medical school with honors at the age of 24. She worked as a nurse in the trauma department of the First City Hospital, as well as in a hospice. Characteristics from work are positive, noted diligence, honesty, ability to find contact with patients. At the last words, the man poked, "You're serious." He turned to Christina. "Do you want me to shift soap and carry this button?" There was no one else. "Alex," Christina began. "Are you the other candidates?" "I'm not a button." Kelly interrupted her unexpectedly. She caught the amazed looks of the man. The girls blushed immediately, but Kelly thought she couldn't make it any worse. "I've had a lot of experience caring for various patients, dying, lying in comas after severe injuries. I've carried the kind of people you can't even imagine." The man suddenly laughed. "What do you need? A button in the hospital, or what? Have you run out of nurses? Or do you think that if I work alone, there will be less?" "They're not," said Kelly. "I need a job, and I applied for your job for my own reasons. If I fit, I'm ready to start now. If not, just say so, and I won't waste your time." She must be as red as a tomato right now, Kelly thought. Alex smiled cheerfully and looked at Christina. "She's perky," he said. "A helper, so to speak. We'll keep her on probation. On 100% pay. You can start work tomorrow." Without even looking at Kelly, he picked up the phone that was on his lap and turned on some video. "Thank you." Carefully, Kelly mumbled. "All button free for today." Without raising her head, the now chief muttered. Christina waved her hand, inviting her to follow her, and she and Kelly went out into the corridor and passed into another room, where there was a desk, chairs, laptop, bookcase, and other paraphernalia appropriate to the office. "And you are good," said Christina admiringly. "Honestly, I did not expect this from you, so I was hired." "Just in case," said Kelly. "Yes," nodded the girl. "He said for a month on probation. But don't worry, you'll be paid as agreed. Fully ready to start from tomorrow." "Sure." "Great. Then let's sign the contract." "Christina, can you tell me more about what my job will be?" Kelly asked. "Let's use the first name," said the assistant. "We're almost the same age." Kelly nodded. "So," Christina continued, "strictly speaking, your qualifications as a nurse are a bit too much. Mostly, it's just the caregiver's duties. Walking, bathing, changing clothes, and things like that. By the way, about moving from the chair to the bed to the bathroom, and all that. Don't worry, the chief's just kidding. In fact, the whole house is equipped with a hoist. A kid can handle it there too." Kelly nodded. From what she'd already seen of the apartment, it would be strange if they hadn't installed elevators. "Of course, you'll be doing some of the nursing duties too. For example, sometimes you'll need to administer painkillers, and administering medications is on your plate, too. Massage." Christina shook her head no. "There's a special person for that." "Well, I think I told you everything. The schedule, payment arrangements, and everything else is here." She held out a folder to Kelly. "You can read it. There are still some questions. I'd like to know more about the nature of the injury," Kelly said. "How long has he been in this condition? What's the prognosis?" "It's in here." Christina filed another folder. "Do you mind if I make us some tea?" she asked. "And you're just studying everything." Kelly replied well. Either Kelly was reading so fast or Christina was deliberately slow in making the tea, except that by the time the assistant returned to the office with a tray on which stood a white porcelain teapot, the same 2 white cups, and a plate of mixed flight cookies, Kelly finalized the schedule. It was simple 5 working days from 8 to 8, if necessary by prior arrangement, weekend shifts for double pay, and was the very information Kelly was reading the papers for in the first place. Seeing the numbers, she breathed a sigh of relief. Everything was scary now. Alex can call her all the names she wants. She'll bitch about everything, and she won't give any reason to fire herself. Cab, food, uniforms, and other expenses are covered by the employer. There was also a patient confidentiality clause, but that's pretty self-explanatory. Now we had to look at the information about the disease. After reading the numerous statements, conclusions, and consultations in my head, Kelly has the following picture. A year ago, at the age of 33, Alex was in a car accident, after which he lay in a coma for several days. Then he woke up. He had a spinal cord injury and a whole list of other minor injuries. He underwent several major surgeries and was in the hospital for almost 6 months. Now he's undergoing intensive rehabilitation, and doctors can't give an accurate prognosis yet. His vitals seem to be good. However, from time to time one or the other arm or both legs stop functioning, where, according to the results of the examination, everything is also fine. They also don't work. The reasons are not clear. The only suggestion is that it could be caused by severe stress. I see. Kelly thought it didn't make sense. I've never had a mystery patient like this before. Just at that moment, Christina walked in with a tray. Finished reading. She asked me when she saw she was already on the last page. "Yeah, that's good. Let's have tea then, and work won't run away." While they drank tea, Kelly wondered if she could ask Christina more personal questions about her boss. Of course, on the one hand, her assistant is being very nice to her, but on the other hand, she would hardly want to share details about her boss's life and fate with a girl she doesn't even know yet. Thinking about it, Kelly decided to start with something innocuous. "How long have you worked for Alex?" she asked. 4 years, Christina answered. "So you were here before everything happened?" "Uh-huh." And Kelly hesitated. "He's always been that way." Christina shrugged, took a thoughtful bite out of a cookie. "Well, he was always strict, but in moderation. Of course, he'd changed a lot since the hospital." The assistant chief suddenly lifted her lips, looking at Kelly carefully. Apparently, Christina saw something in her face that told her she could trust this girl. "He's afraid of looking weak more than anything else in the world. I think that's why he acts like a jerk sometimes, to put it mildly, afraid of being pitied and ready to evoke any other feelings, as long as it's not pity." Kelly frowned. In her opinion, Alex is just a rich, spoiled major who is angry at everyone and everything because of his helplessness. However, she did not voice it aloud. Having discussed with Christina the remaining nuances, they signed the contract, after which the assistant escorted her to the doorstep for tomorrow. Smiling, Christina said, "I'm really glad you're going to work for us." "I'm glad too." "See you tomorrow," Kelly replied. She drove home with her heart drinking itself up with joy, fear, and anticipation. Strangely, her mom hadn't even called once, although Kelly thought Sophia would tear up her phone. Probably thinks the interview isn't over yet and is afraid to distract her daughter. That's okay. The stronger her emotions will be when Kelly rings the doorbell and tells her everything in person. Tony has probably gotten home from school by now too. Before going home, Kelly wrapped up at the candy store and bought a huge cake with peaches and caramel. It was insanely loved. Her mom and her brother. except her dad couldn't stand that flavor combination. What difference does it make? The bakery was fancy and the cake was expensive, but Kelly decided it was worth the splurge. After all, for the first time in a long time, their family was finally getting lucky. Well, Sophia seemed to open the door before her daughter could even press the bell button. Instead of answering, Kelly showed the cake. Got it. Eyed her mom and hugged her tightly, kissing her cheeks. Taken. Who got taken where? It was Tony. Of course, as always, skinny and long in his regular t-shirt with some characters on it. Kelly felt a special fondness for her little brother for some reason. I've got a new job, she said. Put the kettle on. Oh, good for you. The brother replied and went into the kitchen. First, everyone eats soup, Sophia said sternly. And then, of course, tea. After the flight, cookies to eat. Especially did not want to, but it was impossible to offend Mom and refuse the family dinner. Kelly, obsessed with soup, began to tell everything in detail. It turns out that you will be courting a harmful rich man. Say, brother. It's just like that movie. What movie? Sophia asked, surprised. I don't remember the name, shrugged his shoulders. We watched it in English with subtitles. The main thing is that in the end, Kelly has to marry this billionaire. He's not a billionaire, Kelly said. He's just wealthy. Aha, replied the brother. Personal assistant, nurse, massage therapist. Huge apartment tailor-made for him. Just wealthy. Anyway, said the sister, I won't marry him. I'd rather marry a crocodile. He'll probably have a nicer temper. Enough, kids, Sophia interrupted them. We have a beautiful day today. Let's not spoil it with your bickering. Besides, Kelly has her first day of work tomorrow, and Tony has school. Let's have tea and go to bed early. Everyone should be well rested. The brother and sister looked at each other, but didn't argue. When the tea party was over, Tony ran off to his room, and Kelly and her mother cleared the table. Sophia asked worriedly, Is he really that scary? Who's Mom? I don't get it. Kelly, thinking about something of her own. Well, that crocodile of yours. Kelly shrugged. Kelly, Sophia took her daughter's hand and looked intently into her eyes. If things get bad, quit without a moment's hesitation. We'll manage somehow. I don't want you to be humiliated by some busybody rich guy, even if he pays well. Kelly suddenly felt ashamed. She remembered the lengths her mother had gone to for her and her brother after her father left. How could she, Kelly, have the right to complain and turn up her nose after all that? Because that billionaire crocodile had said the wrong thing to her. She tried to smile as sincerely as possible. Mom, don't worry, it's gonna be okay. I'll have that crocodile up and running in no time. You know, I've had more patience than that. That's where he will sit at my place. She shook her hand and shook a small but strong fist. She and her mother laughed. When the door closed behind the girls, Alex to the circus, they said. And this girl really managed to surprise him. Even amused him a little when she came in here in that ridiculous costume with a scythe, like from the fairy tale, with big round black eyes halfway down her face. He thought the button would run out of this room in a minute, and then she gives it to him. Well, let's see how long she lasts. It seems that the previous caregiver's patience lasted a full 2 weeks. Isn't Christina going to be angry again? Of course, she won't say anything out loud, too professional for that. But he already knows the look on her face when she's unhappy with another of the chief's antics. In fact, of all the people he works with, Christina puts up with him the best. How does she do it? And though once again he did not want to sit her at all, he couldn't deny himself this small pleasure. He rolled away from the window and approached the large mirror on the wall. It was set up so that he could see the whole of himself, which was exactly what he didn't want to do. What a pathetic, weak, angry man was looking back at him. No wonder the big eyes and the button were so scared. She has no idea what tomorrow holds for her. And just a little over a year ago, his life was completely different. No, he didn't want to slip into those painful memories. He tries not to remember his life before the accident. There's nothing he can change, and he has to live in the present. no matter how horrible it was. However, his brain skipped the resistance stage, and Alex, against his wishes, mentally went back to the day he'd first met Lola. He had been at an exhibition of an emerging fashionable artist. However, the paintings were of little interest to anyone there. They were used more as an excuse to gather and pretend, like we know about art too. Alex had already had a couple of glasses of champagne with his friends and decided that he wasn't completely drunk yet. It is necessary to give some laps around the garden. The paintings were displayed right in the fresh air. He went from one painting to another, pretending to look at them closely. Meanwhile, he thought, give the monkey at the zoo a paintbrush and a canvas. He'd paint something more meaningful and interesting. It's beautiful, really. Suddenly, I heard a pleasant female voice, behind him. He turned around almost behind him, holding a glass of champagne with slender and graceful fingers. Standing there was the most gorgeous girl he had ever seen. More precisely, a figure that was emphasized by an expensive, possessive red dress, luxurious platinum hair, green, slightly slanted eyes, and flawlessly smooth tanned skin. Looks interesting, he replied. Not daring to give his true opinion of the painting, Blondie nodded, stepped forward, standing beside him and embracing him with the subtle scent of perfume. Pure passion, she said. See how the colors intertwine. She lightly swept her finger in the air in front of the painting, pointing to the place where the artist had combined two spots of red and white to form a soft pink. Yes, very beautiful, nodded Alex. But, unfortunately, I am far from modern art. She raised her eyebrows in surprise. What do you like then? I like that art, the canons of which are eternal and made by nature, Alex admitted. The girl smiled slyly. Can you give an example of such art? Of course, the most perfect example of it right now is in front of my eyes. He expected the blonde to be embarrassed, but she only smiled, showing her beautiful white teeth. Lola said, she said, holding out her hand. Alex answered him. If you are not related to art, Alex, then what do you do? Asked the girl. He shrugged. Nothing interesting. A little bit of everything, you might say. Construction and investment stuff like that. Oh, interested, she said. That's very interesting. What do you do, Lola? I'm a model. Where have I seen you? Instead of answering, the girl opened her small gold-colored purse. From there, she pulled out a neat, thick piece of paper. Are you inviting me to the show? Alex asked, surprised, having studied the invitation. But you wanted to see me, Lola remarked. I will. She smiled again. Thank you for the nice introductions. Unfortunately, I have to go. There's an early shoot tomorrow. Have a good day. Good day. He saw off her slender figure with a long, attentive look and thought that he had never met such a beautiful and spectacular girl. What a fool I was then, thought Alex. Luckily, for the first day of work, there is no need to agonize and pick up clothes, still have to change into a uniform. Kelly wore her favorite orange, green jeans, and a soft white sweatshirt. This time, she came even a little early. Today, she rode the elevator alone. She was met at the apartment by Christina talking on the phone. She waved hello and led the girl into a small room at the beginning of the apartment. Kelly saw a new medical suit hanging on a rack in the room. The soft blue color of the suit shone like a cast, and how did they just know her size? She hadn't put that on her resume. Probably couldn't distract Christina right now, so she would have to find out what their daily routine was here herself. After some thought, she decided to find the chief's bedroom, opening at random several rooms she had knocked on beforehand. Kelly finally found the right one. Finally, Alex said, I thought the apocalypse had happened, and I was going to lie here until my body was eaten by zombies. I'm sorry, Kelly replied. Getting me out of bed would be an apology too. Kelly pressed her lips together and quickly walked over to the bed. She carefully pulled back the blanket on the built-up elevator and moved the man to the chair. For a moment, she thought she saw a pained expression flicker across his face. It doesn't hurt, she asked. He looked at her in surprise. Except from the speed of your button work. Kelly, Gritting her teeth, she would not allow herself to be provoked by him. Oddly enough, the morning hygiene routine went smoothly. Alex seemed to withdraw into himself and followed instructions without argument. Kelly, silently raising her hands under the movements of her labia. Kelly was already beginning to be glad that everything was going well, but it turned out that it was only a small respite. "Well," finally said the chief as they pulled out of the bathroom. "I thought my fins were going to grow back." The girl tried to smile, but I think her smile came out too learned. "Now let's go to breakfast," Alex said. "Let's go?" Kelly asked, surprised. "Let's go. Are you ready to change apartments by going up to the roof? There's a restaurant there where you can have a decent breakfast." Okay. To be honest, Kelly hadn't counted on them having to leave the apartment so immediately. There was no time to change, so she had to walk out onto the landing in her medical suit. There was no one in the elevator, thankfully. But Kelly was still so nervous that she crashed her tire into the elevator wall. "Easy on the turns, Button. I know I can't walk, but that doesn't mean you can give me a car accident on my first day." "I'm sorry." Kelly squeezed the arms of the chair so hard her fingers sought her. "And it's still morning," she thought. "It's going to feel like I've been here forever." "Good morning, Alex." The receptionist greeted them with a businesslike smile. Theirs was a strong word for it. Kelly was given no more attention than the chair. "The usual for you?" "Yes, here." Apparently, the administrator all the same noticed the confused face of the girl and took pity on her. "Let me escort you to your table," said the man, and deftly moved between the rows. Kelly looked gratefully at the back of his head and followed, trying not to hurt anything. They reached their destination safely. Kelly set down the chair and, thinking carefully, sat down in the chair on the opposite side of the table. Kelly asked, "No, the chief usually eats lunch at home. Everything will be delivered at the right time." "What about after lunch?" "He'll rest a bit for about half an hour," said Christina. "Then an IV. A nurse will come in today, show you everything. Starting tomorrow, that duty will be on you." Kelly nodded. The girl knew how to give IVs. Christina continued, "Then we'll work with him some more. Then he has a class with a trainer or a physical therapist. Then dinner, where he will probably need your help too. Then hygiene, and you are free." "Got it," Kelly replied. And she thought to herself, how long is this day going to be? It's a standard routine. There are more or less alternating treatments by specialists. Sometimes he goes somewhere, like out of town, or to a meeting with business partners. Of course, you will accompany him there too. Sometimes he gets angry and wants to be alone. At such times, he behaves like a capricious child. That's when the staff gets the brunt of it. Obviously, you can't take his provocations and leave him alone. "Of course," Kelly said. Christina grinned. "Much easier to say that than to do," said the girl. "Believe me, days like this make you want to kill him." When she saw Kelly's face stretched out, she added hastily, "But it's very rare." "Well, I'm going to work. What am I supposed to do in the meantime?" Kelly asked. Christina shrugged. "What do you want to do? There's a nice library and a home theater. You can use it." "Okay." Christina went to work. Kelly decided to start with the home theater. She'd been to libraries, albeit public ones. She wasn't likely to be surprised by bookcases anyway. A home theater, on the other hand, sounded nice. It turned out to be spacious. A room with thick curtains on the windows. One wall was occupied by a dark screen. The other two shelves were filled to the top with boxes of CDs. So that's why there are still stores selling CDs. At the expense of the crazy rich, Kelly thought. Everything has been on the internet for a long time. Against the wall opposite the screen was a long beige couch, padded with some kind of soft fabric that looked like velvet. Kelly sat on it comfortably. That's probably how Alex spends his evenings. They move him from the chair to the couch and make him comfortable. Friends or family sit on either side of him, and they watch a movie. Whether he has a family, a wife, children, she hasn't seen anyone yet, and Christina hasn't mentioned either. Probably, if they lived in the same apartment with him. Kelly would have seen them many times already, though maybe his wife and kids are on vacation somewhere. That's none of her business, though. It's her friends. Although that kind of temper and temper tantrums aren't exactly conducive to making friends. But most likely, such people as the chief allow himself a boorish attitude only with service personnel. And with those of his status, he is the soul of the company. I wonder what he's watching. Pensively muttered Kelly, reluctantly getting up from the soft couch in such a semi-dark room. Comfortable couch and still want to sleep. What would the chief say if he found out that the nurse had fallen asleep in his home theater on her first day of work? Kelly didn't want to imagine it, so she walked along the long shelves. Mostly there stood the classics of cinema, categorized by genre, by creep and country. The first thing the girl paid attention to were westerns. Well, of course, you have to show how cool you are. Action movies are too easy on the plebeians. Westerns are noble. But the next shelf was filled with action movies, and Kelly was even a little ashamed of her hasty conclusions. The longer she studied the discs, the harder it was to draw any conclusions about the owner of the house. Everything seemed to be here. Kelly found adaptations of her favorite novels by Jane Austen, Charlotte Bronte, and Emily Bronte, and other writers. There were fantasy, cycles, and series, old and new, comedies and horror. When he has time to watch it all or just collects on the principle that there was. By the way Kelly and not particularly knowledgeable about it. Are you going to be a button? Suddenly the chief asked, advancing a menu toward her. Kelly shook her head. Nothing, I ate at home. And what fall at your house for breakfast? Oatmeal. Not bad. At that time, a waiter came to the table. He put in front of Alex a plate with some incomprehensible, gray, greenish mass. The chief followed Kelly's surprised look at some very healthy, but not tasty food. He explained it didn't look good and tasted the same. He slowly raised his right hand and with a sudden sharp movement as if through force threw it on the table. Then he began to slowly move his hand toward the spoon. Every inch of the table seemed to yield to him with great difficulty. Kelly felt terribly uncomfortable. On the one hand, she wanted to rush to him, to help him, to move the spoon or to take it in her hand and feed him. On the other, she realized how humiliating it would be for a man to feel that way. So she began to look at the view from the restaurant windows, but at the same time she kept one eye on Alex, ready to rush to his aid in case of anything. Finally, the chef took a spoon and began to eat slowly. He supported his right hand with his left, took breaks, but still some of the porridge fell back, and he chewed it, shaking spoon time after time. All done with breakfast, he said, and leaned back. Kelly saw that his forehead was glistening with sweat. Let's go back. Shyly, she asked. He nodded without opening his eyes. Yes, an artist needs an artist's rest, she asked in surprise. But I gave you a whole show. Kelly pressed her lips together, but still she couldn't help herself. You're not the first patient I've worked with. I've worked with people with worse conditions than you. I'll keep the apartment in mind. They walked back in complete silence. Luckily, Kelly got a break afterward because Alex had a massage session. Kelly didn't know what she could do in the meantime. The girl went to the room where they were changing. That's where I found her. Christina. Hello again, with a smile. She nodded to Kelly. What are you sitting here for? Kelly shrugged at Alex's massage. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing at this time. Anything you want. Let's go and have some tea. They walked to the kitchen. Christina put the kettle on. By the way, she said, I didn't show you the apartment. I'm sorry, please. I've been so busy this morning. That's all right, Kelly said. I found the chief's bedroom. How do you like the start of the day? Christina asked. Kelly didn't know what to say. So when she heard the whistle of the kettle boiling, she was relieved to rush to the stove, turn off the gas, and look for mugs. Christina watched her with interest, leaned back in her chair. Horns in the right drawer, tea in the left, she said. Kelly replied, rattled the mugs and rustled the bags. Finally, The tea was piled up. Christina pulled out all the sandwiches she had in the fridge. The chief is the one the restaurant cooks for us, so maybe sometimes just ask for tea or coffee. Got it, Kelly said. Really annoying? Christina asked trustingly. Kelly sighed no. It's tolerable. It will get easier with time, said Christina. And sometimes he's in a less obnoxious mood. Less disgusting, the girl muttered. Sounds promising. There's nothing to say. Christina shrugged, telling it like it is. I just don't want you to run away from us after 2 days. I really liked you. Kelly raised her head in surprise and looked at Christina. She seemed to be serious. I'm not leaving, Kelly replied firmly. I need this job. I see. Kelly didn't ask Kelly's assistant for details, and she appreciated the tactfulness. The girls drank tea together and cleared the table. By this time, Alex's massage session had come to an end. Kelly wanted to go to him, but Christina stopped her. We'll take care of work matters now. Then he has lunch. There was a slight hesitation there. He might need your help. We're also going up to the rooftop restaurant. The last time she bought a disc was probably 10 to 15 years ago. It was obvious that all the additions were of high quality and expensive, even though Christina said that it was okay to use the movie theaters. The girl didn't dare to do that and clicked her phone. It was an unexpected message from Christina. Don't you miss me? We'll be done in an hour and lunch will be brought in then. We'll have to open the door for the waiter. He'll set it up from there. Okay, I got it. Thanks. I'm not bored. Studying the apartment. Good for you. I probably shouldn't have written about exploring the apartment like she's prying into someone's private life. Well, I can't take it back. And besides, she had another hour to occupy herself. After some thought, Kelly decided to check out the library. After all, if Alex was against exploring those rooms, Christina would have said so. Kelly thought that the library would just be a room with a few cabinets and nothing to surprise her. How wrong was she? In the first place, it was the largest room in the apartment. In the second place, not just a few, but literally dozens of bookcases. And there was a fireplace, cozy tables, chairs, armchairs, and lamps. And everything is made in the same style of antiquity and nobility. At least, that's how Kelly imagined the library of some rich old manor from Jane Austen's novel, except there were more than just old books. Of course, Kelly didn't even doubt it. She saw on the shelves many expensive collector's editions in leather bindings with gold embossing and other paraphernalia, full of classics. A little wandering around, she found a cabinet of contemporary literature. Most of the names were unfamiliar to her, but some she had read. Kelly didn't notice an hour had passed. It was only when the doorbell rang from afar that she remembered she was supposed to open the door for the waiter. She rushed out of the library so fast that she hit the door jamb with her shoulder. Oops, quietly stiffened. Kelly, taking hold of her injured shoulder, she opened the door. On the threshold stood a smiling young man dressed in a familiar uniform from the restaurant upstairs. Good afternoon, he said hello. Hello, replied Kelly. I think I'm supposed to pick up lunch from you. He raised his eyebrows slightly, but immediately smiled again. I usually bring it to the dining room and the server, but if other orders came in today. No, hastily interrupted the waiter. Kelly and blushed thickly. I'm sorry, it's my first day. Yes, I'm told you know everything. Come in, please. The girl realized she had no idea where the dining room was. How many rooms are there in this apartment? The office, the bedroom, the room where she first met the chief kitchen, the staff room, the library, the room with the movie theater, and now the dining room. Probably the apartment she and her mom and brother live in is about 10 times smaller than the local library. Apparently the waiter, unlike Kelly, knew exactly where everything was, because he strode confidently down the hall, pushing a loaded cart in front of him, which, however, went easily and almost silently. The guy opened the door, rolled his precious cargo in, and wanted to close it behind him. But Kelly suddenly asked, "Can I come with you?" I'd like to see it, please. My name is Jack, by the way. Nice to meet you, Kelly. She carefully stood a little distance from the table so as not to disturb Jack's work. He was setting the table with deft pointing motions, as if he were performing a dance or preparing to perform a magic trick. Kelly was suddenly horrified to find that a mountain of appliances had grown on the table. Alex could barely handle a spoon this morning. How is he going to deal with these knives and forks? And what is the worst, Kelly realized that she herself does not understand what device is intended for what. And if she was asked to help, she wouldn't know which fork to give. Surely the chief wouldn't miss an opportunity to make a clear remark about it. Maybe ask Jack to give her a short lecture on appliances. But apparently the waiter didn't have time after he finished. The young man smiled at Kelly and flew out of the dining room with frightening speed, deftly carrying the emptied cart. Kelly didn't dare to stop him. All right, thought the girl doomedly. Let's solve problems as they come. Christina came into the office, followed by Alex, who was riding in a wheelchair by himself. I knew he could drive it himself. Kelly thought, why did I ride him this morning? Oh, Button, you're here. The chief greeted her cheerfully. Very carefully. I'm hungry this time. Bon appetit, said Christina, threw Kelly a cheering look and walked out. Thank you, the chief replied absent-mindedly. He went to the table and slowly took the lid off the first dish. Kelly saw some kind of meat and vegetables. So you will stand there and watch? Alex asked. Sit next to me. I need to practice eating on my own, but my hands are not always obeyed. And at such moments your task is to catch falling devices and spoon-feed me like a baby. He seemed to say it casually and cheerfully. But Kelly thought for a second that he sounded bitter and frustrated at his own helplessness. She sat back in her chair and moved closer. Sure, she had experience with patients who needed to regain motor skills, and she understood when to let them eat on their own and when assistance would be needed. True, these were usually elderly patients, and to their helplessness she was used to seeing how hard it was to give. The young man was unaccustomed to it. Alex didn't complain, though. He tightly gripped the knife and fork, diligently sawed the meat and slowly awkward movements put it in his mouth. He gave up halfway through the dish. Tired, he said, leaned back in his chair and cooled down. I'm paying you money for this. Kelly brought up her lip. If it hadn't been for the last phrase and the dismissive tone in which it was said, the girl would almost feel sorry for the chief. Good, she replied, and took the fork gently from his hand. Apparently, he really was tired. Kelly noticed his forehead and temples glistening with sweat, not caring what he thought or said. She set her fork aside, picked up a napkin, and swiped those parts of his face. Alex didn't say anything about it. The rest of lunch passed in silence. Take me to the bedroom, he asked. Did she help him transfuse anything else there? Kelly asked. He shook his head and closed his eyes. Kelly left the room, carefully closed the door, and went to the kitchen where Christina was already sitting. Alive? She asked. I'm fine. Let's eat, Kelly shrugged. She felt squeezed like a lemon and didn't realize whether she wanted to eat, drink, sleep, or just leave. Home. Christina laughed. Don't worry, girlfriend, you'll get used to it. You just need to learn about the medication regimen. Feed her dinner, put her to bed, and you'll be free. And listen to a lot more bullying. Kelly thought. Oddly enough, the rest of the day went pretty well. Kelly quickly found a rapport with the nurse she was to replace. She liked Lola's knowledge, and the woman gave her a quick and clear schedule. Kelly what appointments to make and when to make them. After that, Alex and Christina worked again. Then it was dinner where the chief no longer tried to eat on his own and was fed by Kelly. Then a bath and tucked into bed. Of course, there had been some sarcastic comments, but Kelly had already let them pass. At least, she tried to pretend not to. You'll come tomorrow, Christina asked her as she walked her to the door. I will, Kelly replied. Was the button stronger than he thought? Of course, it was too early to make a final judgment. She might not show up tomorrow. He suddenly caught himself thinking that he would be sad if she didn't show up, probably because it was so amusing to watch her reaction. The way she smoked her eyebrows in a ridiculously childish way and pressed her lips together. He suddenly remembered Lola's facial expressions, the way she pouted her lips when she pretended to be dissatisfied with something, though at first she seemed content with everything. That's what he'd liked about her at first, her cheerfulness. Although cheerfulness was not a noble word for Alina in general, in her he liked rather a certain contentment with life. Everything was going well in her life. She was going like a queen. As promised, Alex went to a fashion show. There Lola won him over. She walked down the runway like a goddess. He saw with what admiration men look at her and what envy is read in the eyes of women. She stood out from everyone around her, and he realized that he wanted to have her for himself so that everyone around him would know that this woman was his. He approached her after the show. He had never seen a more beautiful sight in his life, said Alex. Lola smiled coquettishly. Thank you. Champagne. He held out his glass and watched mesmerized as he gracefully. She took it and drank. Lola noticed his gaze and smiled. I think I'm a little tired and hungry, she said. It would be nice to sit in a quiet and peaceful place to eat dinner now. Have a glass of wine. I know just the place, he said. During dinner, he never tired of marveling at how smart, interesting, and beautiful Lola was. She seemed to like him too. Lola, will you go out with me? He asked at the end of the evening. She laughed beautifully, tilting her head back a little. Don't you like waiting? When I realize I've found what I've been looking for all my life. Waiting is just silly, Alex replied. She looked at him carefully with her emerald eyes. Okay, I agree. They got married in 6 months and waited so long only because the wedding preparations were underway, and he proposed to her a little more than a month later. At the wedding, he felt like a winner who had taken the most valuable and biggest prize, as if he had won the Olympics or the Nobel Prize. He was pleased that friends and relatives came up to congratulate him, saying, "What a wife you've got. Man, how beautiful is she?" That kind of thing. The only person who didn't like Lola was his little sister Kim. She didn't say it out loud, but he could see it in her sister's rights and wary look. Fine, he decided. Then Kim would realize she was wrong. Who would have thought, looking at this beautiful young couple, that it was the groom himself who was wrong then? Kelly turned the key in the lock. How tired was she? She just wanted to shower and fall into bed. Wish everyone at home was asleep. Like the first day, Sophia showed up in the hallway. Everything's fine. Kelly put on her usual smile. The mother looked closely at her face. Right. Sure, Mom. You look tired. Kelly decided that the only way to win here was with half-truths. Well, I am tired. First day back, she said. So much to memorize and learn. All right. The mother said hesitantly. Are you going to have dinner? Kelly shook her head negatively. No, I ate there and the youngest is at home. Where else would he be? Sitting around playing as usual. Kelly nodded. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm really, really tired. I'm going to go to bed in the shower. Sophia took another careful look at her daughter, sighed, but said nothing. When Kelly finally made it to bed and climbed under the covers, she felt her whole body, and especially her brain buzzing. She was horrified to think that tomorrow she would have to go back there again and interact with the horrible, nasty, boorish Alex again. He would humiliate her, call her a button, revel in his power, and the fact that the girl wouldn't be able to say anything back to him. I won't go, she thought. I'm not going anywhere. I'll go back to the hospital, and they'll welcome me with open arms. I'll go part-time. I'll get another part-time job. Of course, I won't be home, but that's what I was going for. Kelly wasn't worried about how tired she'd be. She was. About how there'd be no time for a personal life. It was a pace she had long since gotten used to. The girl thought about the fact that her mother and brother would be left without her attention. Her brother's 16. He needs a watchful eye. And Mom can't manage the house by herself anymore either. She needs help. And most importantly, even if Kelly picks up all the part-time jobs she can, the sum total won't compare to what she'll get from one job. Kelly clammed up. She didn't want to remember why she needed the money. However, the tired mind, in addition to her will, had already transported all the memories. To be exact, to a specific day 8 years ago. Kelly had been 16 at the time. She was on her way home from school that day. It was spring, and despite the approaching exams, she was in a great mood. She imagined coming home from school and telling her parents about her progress. She sensed something wrong in the stairwell. The door to the apartment was open, and a strange, howling sound was coming from there. For a few seconds, Kelly became frightened. She thought about running away, calling the neighbors or calling the police, or then there were already police. However, the girl thought of her family and resolutely stepped inside. There was no one in the hallway, but it was clear that the strange howling sound was crying, and it was definitely coming from the kitchen. Mom called out to Kelly, going into the kitchen. Sophia was there. She was sitting helplessly on a chair, dropping her head on the table and covering it with her hands as if trying to protect it from something. Tony was standing next to her, looking confused, judging by his shirt and pants. He hadn't changed after school, though his classes were ending earlier than Kelly's. He was fearfully stroking his mother's hair and shoulders. Then the boy saw his sister. Relief was reflected on his face. "What's wrong?" Kelly asked. Sophia looked up. "Daddy?" Kelly asked. Did something happen to Daddy? Her heart sank to the bottom of her throat, and her mind was spinning with dozens of possibilities. He was hit by a car at work. A concrete slab fell on him while he was walking past a construction site. He was shot in the street. "We have thrown suddenly," sharply and firmly answered Tony. The mother stopped crying that, not believing what she had heard. Kelly asked. Sophia smiled. "If he had just left us, that would have been half the trouble." "Mom, what? What are you guys even talking about?" The mother sighed. Kelly sighed. Kelly sat down on a chair. Her brother looked at her and walked around the chair too, and sat down next to her. Sophia wiped her tears and looked at the children seriously. "Your father and Robert. I've known about it for a long time. He's always had a passion for gambling. Even before we were married. It didn't seem like a big deal to me then. Especially when Kelly was born, he promised to quit. And indeed, over the years, he more or less did. Of course, I suspected that he was a gambler from time to time, but not much. You found out he was gambling, and you had a fight." The daughter assumed the mother. "No, it's much worse than that. He lost, very badly, owed a lot of money to serious people." Sophia's lips quivered. Kelly looked at her mother and could not believe that this conversation was really happening. "And he ran away," finished the mother. "No one knows where. You know what that means, don't you?" Kelly clapped. She was only 16. She understood. "We'll have to pay his debts." Mother nodded. "There's a lot there, a lot." From that moment on, their quiet, happy life came to an abrupt end. Strangely, up until then, Kelly had thought their family had been doing well. They did not live very rich, but not worse than others. Now her mother had to take a second job. She was hardly ever home. All the money went to pay her debt. Kelly had to take over the upbringing of 8-year-old Tony. After medical school, she took a job as a night shift nurse. And then came those endless years of constant hard work and monthly payments to cover the debt they didn't create. My father never showed up. As time went on, Mother's health deteriorated from the hard work. She couldn't work so much anymore. So Kelly persuaded her to stay in one job. Tony found some part-time work on the internet too. What was he doing? Kelly didn't really understand, but at least his little brother had enough for his own wants, and sometimes he gave the family some money. Of course, Kelly had no time for a personal life. She lived only on the thought of repaying her debt, of taking the burden off their family. There were no other dreams of purpose in her life. The next week just passed, the cup of patience slowly overflowing. Sometimes in the bathtub, she thought about how she would now grab the chief from behind, by the neck, bend down sharply so that his face was submerged in the water, and hold him like that for at least 5 minutes, or preferably all 10. She also often imagined turning a plate of food over his head, but she just worked, moving his soap, feeding him, putting in IVs and listening, and putting up with the endless tweaks and addressing and button, and comments and jokes about how slow and clumsy and inept she was, even though she was doing everything perfectly. Finally, the weekend came, and most importantly, Kelly received her paycheck for the week, apparently realizing that they don't keep staff for long anyway. Christina counting everyone for each week's pay brought Kelly some joy. She even tried to calculate how long she would need to work for her to pay off her debt. But her tired brain refused to calculate. "What are your plans for the weekend?" Sophia asked her daughter on Friday night. She was going to visit an elderly relative who was Kelly and Antosh's great aunt, or second cousin. Tony was going camping with the class all weekend. Kelly realized, need to tell her mother something to rim some more so she wouldn't guess how much. "Daughter, you're probably going out with your girlfriends," Kelly said carelessly. "I don't know yet. In fact, she was just sleeping." How nice it was not to have to get up on an alarm clock and drive to the rich tyrant's house to listen to his grousing and bullying all day. To be able to just lie in bed, to lie in bed indefinitely. Of course, in the end she got up sluggishly, had breakfast with what was left of last night's dinner, then watched some TV series, and she was perfectly content with that for Saturday night. The girl decided that she was probably more or less rested and energized. Maybe she could go out with the girls tomorrow. Kelly thought, "I'll write to her and 3 of her classmates who were in medical school together." Kelly had her own messenger group and wrote. The girls responded quickly and agreed to meet tomorrow. How long had it been since we'd seen each other? She finally went to bed with joyful anticipation of tomorrow. Especially the meeting was in the afternoon, and again it was possible to sleep longer, but it was not possible to sleep. At 6 o'clock she was awakened by the phone ringing. Understandably, on Sunday they would only call this early if something was wrong. So Kelly quickly picked up the phone, dreading the thought of what could have happened to Mom or Tony. "Yes, Kelly, I'm sorry." She heard Christina's guilty voice. Christina. Kelly checked the date and time. No, she definitely had the day off today. She couldn't have gotten anything wrong. "What's wrong?" Christina sighed. "The chief is going out of town today, while it's a business meeting with his partners. And it's also all going to be at the complex where they're going to give him all sorts of wellness treatments." Sleep had left Kelly, probably because she hadn't woken up yet. She said the following, "Well, let him go. I don't care. He needs a nurse there, Kelly. It's written in my contract that I have to give at least 48 hours notice for unscheduled absences." Christina sighed. "I know, he gave me a half-hour notice too. And that's why you're double the salary you were supposed to get for overtime. It's doubled. You're telling me I'm gonna get paid 4 times what I normally get paid. Is that how you ride with hope?" The assistant asked. "I am." "Good. Give me your address. Will the driver pick you up?" Kelly sighed and gave the address. "Great. It'll be here in 20 minutes, Christina said. "Thank you, Kelly. You are the best." Kelly sat up on the bed. Her body and mind strongly objected to being up so much. But some part of her brain was screaming the one word money. "Okay," Kelly muttered to herself as she went to the bathroom. "The more money I get out of this creep, the less I'll have to work for him." She took a quick shower, brushed her teeth, gulped down a glass of tea and a sandwich, and almost immediately the driver called. As they drove to the chief's apartment, Kelly thought it was unlikely that he had scheduled a meeting with business associates at 500 on a Sunday. Surely they must have arranged it at least last night on purpose. He'd said so late to make fun of her. Oh, finally, the button showed up. Alex greeted her. He was half lying in bed, reading something on his laptop. I mean, he's got his hands right now. And he looked perfectly content. Kelly gathered all the will in a fist and remained silent. "What clapping your big eyes?" Alex asked, shifting me and taking me to breakfast. "I'm going to have to force your laptop out." Kelly thought, "Of course you would have moved it a long time ago, if you hadn't pretended to be busy." "Well," suddenly smiling, said Kelly. She carefully but sharply snatched the laptop from the chief's hands, slammed the lid, and put it on the table. Then quickly, before the man had time to regain his senses, threw back the blanket and, grabbing it in a hoist, transferred it to a chair. From surprise, Alex did not say a word. Just as quickly and silently they finished their morning procedures, and even at breakfast they didn't speak a word. By the way, Alex drove himself, and his hand hardly even shook. Kelly thought that he was eating unconsciously, as if his thoughts were somewhere else. When they got back to the apartment, the chief said, "Now a driver will pick us up." They went downstairs, and the driver helped the chief get into the car. As Kelly pointed out, the car was equipped for Alex and his features. As they drove, the chief paid no attention to her, sitting on his phone. Kelly, on the other hand, was looking out the window and thinking about the failed meeting with her friends. She had written messages to the general chat room, but no one had responded yet. Not surprising. At this hour, the girls were probably still asleep. After about an hour and a half, the car pulled in behind a tall fence and soon came to a stop. Did the doors open? Kelly got out. The driver started to help Alex out. The girls saw that they stood in front of a large, beautiful building. It looked like a country club or a spa center. Since Kelly had never been to one of those places, it was hard to tell. "Ho, hey, Alex." She heard a cheerful male bass. A tall, pumped-up man of about 35, dressed in shorts and a white t-shirt, approached the chief. He shook hands with Alex and then turned his attention to Kelly. "And who is this beauty?" Greetingly, he asked, cautiously, extending his hand to her and shaking Kelly gently on her fingers. "My new nurse," Alex answered carelessly. "How much?" "Hold on. Friendly." Asked the man to Kelly for a week. Commendable. More than 2/3 of the way through. "Thomas, stop flirting with my nurse already. I want a massage," irritably muttered Alex. After those words, the chief rolled toward the porch. Thomas winked at Kelly and followed his friend. Kelly hoped that once they got inside, it would become clearer what this place was all about. However, there she was even more confused. On the one hand, it looked like a reception hall and a waiting area like a hotel or something. On the other hand, there was no one else in the huge hall except the three of them. Thomas noticed her wandering, surprised look and explained this future spa hotel opening in a couple weeks. "In the meantime, ask my best friend to test. Give some tips, and Kelly, I'd be happy for you to join in and give your opinions." "Yep, and her duties will be done by you then." Chief Kelly blushed. "But why not?" Thomas responded cheerfully. "That I didn't change my best friend's diaper, or sneaking around." "Go on, you know I'm fine with that." It was obvious that discussing such details embarrassed the chief. Thomas winked at Kelly again, and she was in such a better mood that she wanted to kiss the man, not the chief. And Thomas' first stop, the massage center, Thomas announced solemnly, opening the door in front of a scowling Alex and a smiling Kelly. Yes, complex was the appropriate word. They walked down the hallway of cozy individual cubicles, and Thomas talked nonstop about which specialists he would have working for him and what massage techniques they possessed. There's everything from therapeutic ones done by a boy with 10 years experience, the best in town, to all sorts of active entertainment is what? Sluggishly asked Alex. Massage herbal bag glasses with fire, singing, frequent stones. "Oh, I see. I'll have a traditional rehabilitative," Thomas replied. "We'll pick something up for Kelly then." Kelly was surprised and nervous. She was not ready for a massage. Thomas already turned to her with a smile. "There is a wish." The girl shook her head. "No, thank you. I don't need one. I can't at work." You argue with the bosses harshly. Suddenly asked from somewhere from afar the chief, who was already being led into a cubicle with curtains tightly closed. Kelly sighed well. He was woken up at 6:00 a.m. on his day off and forced to drive to the middle of nowhere. Missed seeing her friends. All right, she'd get her own way. She looked at Thomas and smiled. What's your advice? Oh, he exclaimed happily. Now we're talking. Betty saw a pretty young girl appear from somewhere. Yes, Thomas. Please arrange a massage for our beautiful guest for about an hour. In this booth, Thomas pointed to the booth next door, to the one Alex was hiding in. I'll need to get your opinion as I go along, he explained. The cubicles were cozy and fully enclosed. Kelly undressed and lay down on the couch. Betty asked, "What are we going to do?" "I don't know," Kelly replied. "I want to do something out of the ordinary. Let's have your choice." "Are you allergic to herbs?" the woman asked. "No." "Great, then we'll have an herbal pouch massage. I promise you'll remember it for a long time." Betty took her time lighting the candles. Incense turned on some quiet, peaceful music. Kelly somehow relaxed. It was as if she was disconnected from the rest of the world. She didn't even care that the hated boss was in the next cubicle. Soft but dense cloths and sacks touched her back. It smelled pleasantly of herbs. "What do you think?" 10 minutes later, she heard Thomas's voice. "It's fine. Thank you." "Then I won't interrupt you again." "You're welcome." That was the chief's voice. "Actually, I thought I was the one who was supposed to be assessing your complex and giving you advice. Not my nurse jealousy." Thomas whispered affectionately. "I'll leave you to it." He could be heard walking away towards his friend's stall, and soon they were discussing something. It was not exactly audible what the conversation was about. Till didn't really listen. She tried to switch off and enjoy the massage to the fullest. The remaining time passed unnoticed. "Thank you very much." "Thanked Jana." "Get dressed." "I feel as if I were born again." She smiled and made a slight bow. "Well, Kelly, what do you think?" Thomas asked. "Best massage of my life." "It's gonna be." Thomas winked. "Next up, we've got a water treatment. Are you ready?" "I'll have to participate in that too. My dear friend is too thick-skinned to appreciate all the subtleties. I think that's why fate sent me you." "I'm going to throw up," commented Alex. Thomas comically darted down the hallway, grabbed a dainty flower pot standing in the horse aisle, and obligingly said his friend will. I could hardly contain my laughter. "This way, please." "Fuck you." The chief rolled back around Thomas and went further down the hall. "Not that way, my dear biker," shouted Thomas. "Then show me to the next room," which was a large and very nicely decorated anteroom. There the guests were greeted with a smile by a young girl. Thomas addressed her. "Show our guest to the women's locker room. I suppose she'll need a bathing suit, a cap, a towel, and everything else. We'll manage on our own." Kelly followed the girl with some embarrassment. She didn't feel like changing in front of a strange girl, but she quickly gave her a towel cap and a glimpse of the sealed swimsuit. "If it doesn't fit, call me," she said and walked out. It was slick and closed, and a black swimsuit that not only fit true to size, but also fit perfectly. Kelly was a little self-conscious about her figure. It seemed to her that at her small height she had two lush shades. However, in the mirror it looked very nice. She tangled herself in her towel and walked out of the locker room. "Thomas asked to see you out," Senia said. They walked to the large hall, which was divided into several separate pools. In one of them already sat Alex, who met Kelly with a frown, and in the one next to him Thomas. He was smiling, as usual. "Kelly, do you sit here?" he said, pointing to the tub across the hall. "You'll see for yourself." There was nothing to do. Kelly carefully threw off the towel for a moment. She thought she caught the interested glances of both men, and carefully sat down. It felt good. The water was warm and didn't smell like chlorine or anything, like a pool usually does. "All right, everyone's in position. We're good to go. Bring it in." Thomas clapped his hands, and 3 waiters came out, each placing a tray next to one of the tubs. Kelly noticed that the contents were different for everyone. She, for example, had a bottle of champagne, a glass, a plate of fruit and cheese. I apologize for the banality, but unfortunately, I did not have time to find out your preferences, and Alex doesn't know anything about you. How would I know what she eats? Mumbled the chief. Bananas and green sour apples. Kelly suddenly answered, "That's my favorite fruit." "And you guessed champagne." She smiled and looked gratefully at Thomas, studiously ignoring the chef. Maybe it was high time she did that. After all, he'd dragged her out here himself. I don't know why. He hadn't needed her for half a day. And there are plenty of people here to help him move, change clothes, and so on. "I'm very glad," Thomas replied, and raised his glass of whiskey, I think. Well, 2 introductions. He took a sip. Kelly did too. Alex, looking somewhere in front of him, also glumly drank from his glass. For a while the 3 of them sat silently in their tubs. Pleasant music was playing. Bubbles were bubbling quietly but actively in the water. Pleasant body passengers slid and burst on contact with their skin. Kelly watched this picture thoughtfully, not noticing herself as she took a few more sips of champagne. She hadn't eaten much, and maybe that's why. When Thomas asked her a question, she answered honestly, "Why did you decide to become a nurse?" "Kelly." She looked up at him. He really did seem to be interested. However, did he really care? When was the last time in her life a nice, good-looking man had paid attention to her? And it wasn't because she was taking care of his elderly mother or grandmother. "I thought it was very beautiful," Kelly replied. "I imagined walking through the hospital, in the white beanie uniform that only old movies wear, and people looking on, I don't know, with admiration and awe." "Were your expectations met?" She grinned, "Not quite." "And how long ago did you start working?" Thomas continued to ask. "Since freshman year," admitted the girl, first as an orderly. "And how did you finish college as a nurse? Tell us what a nurse's job looks like from the inside." She looked at the chief. He was lying there with his eyes closed and didn't seem to be listening to their conversation. Kelly answered eagerly. "Before I came here, I used to get up at 6 o'clock to be at work by 8. I was there until 4, handing out pills, giving shots and IVs. And since there were not enough nurses, I also took patients to procedures, fed, and washed them. At 4 p.m., 24 hours later, I started night duty. Same old thing. Except I had to see incoming patients. I also had a part-time job at another hospital, also night duty. The duties are the same, but the department profile is different." "Wow," Thomas exclaimed. "I can see why you left. You probably haven't been home much. Your husband must have been terribly jealous of your work." "I'm not married. I live with my mom and my little brother. I've hardly ever been home. And they need looking after." "So where did your father go when I was 16? There was silence. It seemed to Kelly that Alex was looking at her from beneath the hollow of her lashes. "I apologize for the indelicate question," Thomas said. "But it turns out that you are the main breadwinner in your family now." Kelly shrugged. "Altogether," she said. "My mom works. My brother also works part-time on the internet. He does some websites or something. I haven't really looked into it. But he's pretty good with computers in general." Thomas nodded. "I hope my nerdy friend isn't hurting you financially." Kelly smiled. "No. It's practically a perfect job. 1 patient fixed work day of recycling is paid for, and the money is much more than for all my several hospital jobs combined." "I'm glad." Coldly, the chief replied. Without opening his eyes, Thomas smiled, reached forward, poured Kelly some champagne. She shook her head negatively. "DP, are you a button?" Suddenly, Alex's voice boomed out. "There's someone here to drag me to the chair and spoon-feed me, that's right." "It is we with pleasure," said Thomas. "We're going to lunch in half an hour. Have some more champagne." Kelly, suddenly bold. "Can I ask you a personal question?" The girl asked, looking closely at Thomas. Sure. How did you become friends with Alex? But why go to such lengths? Call me like everyone else, Chief. And Alex, after what you've done to my helpless body this week, I've lost Alex's authority, the man muttered. Kelly blushed, and Thomas laughed. See, he nodded at his friend. And this one is sarcastically dry. And the self-irony wakes up after the second drink. If that's the case, I think he's not yet lost to our glorious society. You go, you, answered the chief still without opening his eyes. Feed the invalid for a massage. Ah, you won't last long. We will go soon. Thomas waved away and turned to Kelly. To answer the question, we were friends when we were at university together. I was then as I am now, handsome, slim and cheerful. And he was also, like me, fun-loving. I mean, we both liked noisy company. That's how we got together. I was the one who liked company, the chief put in. And you were only interested in their female side. I don't know what you're implying. The friend waved away and rolled his eyes innocently. Anyway, he had a great character back then. That's how we became friends. And yourself, you know, so many years have passed. Even though he became that still unbearable, not to abandon an old friend. Kelly nodded. So before the accident, the chief was the soul of the company. Interesting. But Thomas was back on his feet. Let's go to lunch. They were set up on a large veranda overlooking a garden with fountains. Kelly took a seat next to the boss on the other arm, from whom Thomas sat down. Kelly thought with amusement that he was also ready to help if Alex couldn't handle the cutlery. Strangely enough, however, there was no problem. He calmly cut the meat, drank, lifting a full glass, and his hands hardly shook. Interesting selectivity. I thought, Kelly, that's how it works with his legs too. We should discreetly check with Thomas. If they're friends like that, he must have noticed something like that. After lunch, the occasion presented itself. The chief was laid to rest. Kelly gave him a drip, and Thomas offered to show her the garden. Let him lie down and think about his behavior. Thomas said, I'm just a bunny today. Alex replied. Kelly agreed with that. But she did not refuse the opportunity to walk in the garden. As soon as they were a decent distance from the veranda, the girl asked, Did you notice that Alex's hands work selectively? Sometimes it's as if he doesn't control them at all. But today, for example, he ate without any help at all. Thomas nodded seriously. I've noticed that. I have some guesses. What does it depend on? May I ask what they are? Yes, I think it would be useful to you. He controls his hands when he's calm, relaxed, or happy. Maybe it's the alcohol tonight. It's like he's forgotten he can't eat without help. But when he gets angry or upset about something, he'll shake like a leaf. He gets angry because he's helpless. He shakes even more. It's a vicious circle. Anyway, Kelly pressed his lips together thoughtfully. And he has no such thing with his legs. Thomas even stopped and looked away. You know, I remember once we went on a trip together. We laughed and joked a lot on the way back. I barely helped him out of the car and into the seat. He almost walked over by himself. Kelly nodded. Her thoughts were finding confirmation. What does he usually get frustrated and out of sorts? Yes, probably different things, like all of us. Thomas answered thoughtfully. When there's a force majeure at work, or the results of examinations are bad, or training doesn't work out, or when Lola comes to mind. That's the main trigger. Lola. Oops. Thomas realized he'd said too much. So you don't know anything. I thought Christina shared. No, Kelly didn't. It would be inappropriate to find out who Lola is, much less who Kelly was to ask about it. Her intuition told her to just keep quiet. And indeed, after a minute, Thomas spoke up. His ex-wife. They hadn't been married that long for a few years. Typical story. A promising rich businessman and a hot model. They met. He fell in love instantly and proposed almost immediately. Everything was nice and beautiful. He's rich and she's beautiful. And of course, successful and popular. Everything was going well at first, which is not often the case in marriages like this. To be honest, I was apprehensive about Lola at first, but Alex seemed happy with her, and I eventually calmed down. And then what happened? Kelly asked. Thomas sighed and looked toward the veranda. Okay, Kelly, it was you and your charm. I'm not usually such a chatterbox, and I don't give away all my friends' private lives to someone I've known for a day. Kelly looked him in the eyes and said, okay, whatever you say. The man sighed and rolled his eyes. Now, how do you say no to a cutie like that? Okay, I'll tell the devious ones. Then Sasha had this accident. I don't know the exact circumstances. He didn't even tell me. But for some reason, I think it had something to do with his wife. After the accident, he was taken to the hospital in a very serious condition. He was in a coma for a few days. Of course, Lola, Kim Jir, Alex, my sister, my parents were all there. Lola, as she should, without the same loss, did not cry, stayed outside his room for long periods of time. She'd come in for the minutes they'd let her in. And one day the doctor told us that there was almost no chance, and that either Alex was about to die, or he was in a coma for an indefinite period of time. But still, after a month or a year or two, will die. That's terrible, Kelly said. Thomas nodded. Words can't describe how we felt when we heard that. Do I still get chills down my spine when I think about it? We stood there crying, sobbing, and Lola was kind of in a reverie. Before we knew it, she was gone. I haven't seen her since. How's that? What happened to her? Thomas laughed. Nothing bad, if that's what you mean. She never came back with her relatives or contacted me again. And soon we found out that she had filed for divorce. I don't know what connections or acquaintances she used, but she got the divorce. I don't remember exactly when it happened. Was Alex still in a coma, or had he just come out of it and signed the papers himself? What a nightmare. Kelly suddenly imagined what her boss must have been going through. Waking up after a car accident, almost dying, and then finding out that your favorite wife is leaving you without apparently saying a word in person. By the way, Lola married pretty quickly afterward, Thomas continued, to some young guy. I don't remember exactly who he was, whether he was a model or a photographer. Wow, I'm impressed, Kelly exhaled. And how Alex had survived it, Thomas sighed very heavily. That was when his character changed a lot. For one thing, he'd been on the verge of life and death for months, even after he'd come out of the coma. More surgeries from walking, from anesthesia to constant pain. And when it became clear that his body wasn't working properly, it just got to him. That's probably how he survived. Pure stubborn anger and aggression. Did it help him fight? Kelly remarked. Yeah, I guess so, Thomas muttered. He shut himself off from everyone, even from us. He refused to talk about what had happened between him and Lola. It became impossible to work with Alex. Most of the staff changed. Christina was the only one left, and a few other staff members. I'm not even talking about the sitters and nurses. It was like he hated his enforced helplessness, and even though he couldn't do without you. You're the most vivid reminder of how weak he is. Is that why he hates me so much? Kelly finished thoughtfully. It wasn't you that Thomas corrected. What you represent to him. She nodded. Well, after this conversation, it all made a lot more sense. Let's go, Thomas said. The IV must be out by now. Kelly looked at her watch. For about 5 more minutes, she said. But let's go. The rest of that day passed quietly. The chief kept the jokes to a minimum and focused on the center. He likely suspected that Kelly and Thomas were talking about him, but he didn't ask about anything. In the evening, the driver on the way took Kelly home. Did she see with what interest Alex was looking around the neighborhood where she lived? Well, Kelly thought, not your new building, just an ordinary bedroom neighborhood of old 5-story buildings. Strangely enough, the chief did not let go of any remarks about it, and only when she was getting out of the car, said thank you for agreeing to go out today. You have tomorrow off. I'll see you Tuesday. The door closed. The car drove off, leaving a stunned Kelly in the driveway. Yeah, that was the face on the button right now. Apparently, he really is such a beast that even such a simple gesture as an unscheduled day off had caused her such amazement, though perhaps her eyes were so rounded. Out of thanks. Come to think of it, Alex doesn't even remember thanking her once all week, even though she really does her job perfectly. He's got a lot to compare her to. The phone rang. Yeah, Thomas missed me. You know that, my good man. I'm starting to miss you as soon as you get in the car. A friend answered. Come on, what do you want? I was just wondering when I was driving, how was Kelly? Alex suddenly felt an unpleasant prick somewhere inside his chest. Kelly just started up at home. What's up? Nothing, Thomas answered. Just a very nice girl. I'm glad you introduced me to her. Kelly, the usual. Thomas bent. Well, for you, maybe your own type. Just long-legged models now. No one is my type at all. And Lola was kind of in a reverie. Before we knew it, she was gone. I haven't seen her since. How's that? What happened to her? Thomas laughed. Nothing bad. If that's what you mean. She never came back with her relatives or contacted me again. And soon we found out that she had filed for divorce. I don't know what connections or acquaintances she used, but she got the divorce. I don't remember exactly when it happened. Was Alex still in a coma, or had he just come out of it and signed the papers himself? What a nightmare. Kelly suddenly imagined what her boss must have been going through. Waking up after a car accident, almost dying, and then finding out that your favorite wife is leaving you without apparently saying a word in person. By the way, Lola married pretty quickly afterward, Thomas continued, to some young guy. I don't remember exactly who he was, whether he was a model or a photographer. Wow, I'm impressed, Kelly exhaled. And how Alex had survived it, Thomas sighed very heavily. That was when his character changed a lot. For one thing, he'd been on the verge of life and death for months even after he'd come out of the coma. More surgeries from walking, from anesthesia to constant pain. And when it became clear that his body wasn't working properly, it just got to him. That's probably how he survived. Pure stubborn anger and aggression. Did it help him fight? Kelly remarked. Yeah, I guess so, Thomas muttered. He shut himself off from everyone, even from us. He refused to talk about what had happened between him and Lola. It became impossible to work with Alex. Most of the staff changed. Christina was the only one left, and a few other staff members. I'm not even talking about the sitters and nurses. It was like he hated his enforced helplessness, and even though he couldn't do without you. You're the most vivid reminder of how weak he is. Is that why he hates me so much? Kelly finished thoughtfully. It wasn't you that Thomas corrected. What you represent to him. She nodded. Well, after this conversation, it all made a lot more sense. Let's go, Thomas said. The IV must be out by now. Kelly looked at her watch. For about 5 more minutes, she said. But let's go. The rest of that day passed quietly. The chief kept the jokes to a minimum and focused on the center. He likely suspected that Kelly and Thomas were talking about him, but he didn't ask about anything. In the evening, the driver on the way took Kelly home. Did she see with what interest Alex was looking around the neighborhood where she lived? Well, Kelly thought, not your new building, just an ordinary bedroom neighborhood of old 5-story buildings. Strangely enough, the chief did not let go of any remarks about it, and only when she was getting out of the car, said thank you for agreeing to go out today. You have tomorrow off. I'll see you Tuesday. The door closed. The car drove off, leaving a stunned Kelly in the driveway. Yeah, that was the face on the button right now. Apparently, he really is such a beast that even such a simple gesture as an unscheduled day off had caused her such amazement, though perhaps her eyes were so rounded. Out of thanks. Come to think of it, Alex doesn't even remember thanking her once all week, even though she really does her job perfectly. He's got a lot to compare her to. The phone rang. Yeah, Thomas missed me. You know that, my good man. I'm starting to miss you as soon as you get in the car. A friend answered. Come on, what do you want? I was just wondering when I was driving, how was Kelly? Alex suddenly felt an unpleasant prick somewhere inside his chest. Kelly just started up at home. What's up? Nothing, Thomas answered. Just a very nice girl. I'm glad you introduced me to her. Kelly, the usual. Thomas bent. Well, for you, maybe your own type. Just long-legged models now. No one is my type at all. It's a waste. No, it's probably a good thing you don't see anyone now. Thomas muttered. What are you talking about? Nothing. Bye. Good to see you. Thanks for the test drive of the center and the invaluable recommendations. Feel free to come back with Kelly anytime. I'd be happy to. Okay. Thomas hung up. Alex felt a slight irritation. Suddenly, that he was teasing him on purpose, there was no way he could like it so much. Just an ordinary nurse. And by the way, it was for nothing that Thomas accused him of being overly demanding of women. Kelly, of course, does not look like a model at all, but she is very nice. And he, Alex, sees that. He suddenly smiled, remembering how concentratedly she frowns her eyebrows and stiffens her lower lip when she gives him an IV. Doesn't hurt at all, by the way. And how relaxed she was lying in the pool today, staring off into the distance with her big expressive eyes. She never looks so relaxed with him. However, it is understandable why models and he is not obsessed with them at all. He had no one else besides Elena. Lola. A pile of unpleasant memories again floated to the surface of consciousness, and there was no strength to hide it. He remembered the accident. Not even Thomas had told anyone about it. Also, they say women are good at hiding their cheating. Although maybe Lola was subconsciously acting like a serial killer who wants to get caught and so leaves traces at the scene of the crime. Well, or was it just a simple accident? Or was she just so sure of his boundless love? Anyway, it all happened to the point of triviality. He was just sitting at his laptop, solving work issues. Lola sat in the chair next to him. They were having a nice conversation, not getting caught up in work. She kissed him on the lips. I'm going to the bathroom for a while. I'll miss you, he replied. The girl left, leaving her phone on the table. He wouldn't have noticed it if it wasn't for the sound of an incoming message. He wasn't going to read it either. Just automatically raised his eyes to the invading screen. Those few words had ruined his life. Sunshine, thank you for the best night of my life. Your Kelly is hopefully not around. At that moment, Lola came out of the bathroom. Everything was still salvageable. She could say anything. He was ready to believe it was a joke, that it was a wrong number, that he'd imagined it, or that he'd forgotten how to read. But her startled look and the pale face made him realize it was true. Alex doesn't remember well how he left the house, got into the car, and drove off. When he later recalled this moment, he couldn't even answer himself the question, where did he go and why? He could have just gone for a walk. If only he had just gone for a walk then. How, where, and how much he was going, badly remembered only the very moment of the accident, when time slowed down, and only the pole was inexorably approaching, despite the pressure in the floor of the brake. Further on, consciousness returned in fragments. The unbearably loud roar of the siren, the hard stretcher on which he was being laid, then the white ceiling of the hospital, the search for instruments in the ICU room. It was like that for weeks, if not months. Even the moment of divorce passed like a blur. Thank goodness, the lawyer came at that rare moment when neither Thomas nor any of the family members were around. Alex listened to what the lawyer said and signed all the papers. It was a good thing that he and Lola had a prenup. Of course, under it, she was getting a sizable payoff. But any money was worth never seeing her again in his life. When he'd found out she'd gotten married, he'd experienced a strange feeling, more like a mixture of bitterness and surprise. How could he have thought it was a stranger's woman, the dearest person in the world to him? Had several years of marriage and happiness been a lie? Then he decided that love was no longer for him. especially in his condition. Who would want an invalid? Would they be with him now or for his money? Or worse, out of pity? And she's certainly never going to love him. A girl he treats the way he's been treating Kelly all this time. Kelly went to bed. It had been an amazing day. Her head was exploding from the abundance of new information and impressions. She suddenly caught herself smiling. The first time she smiled was when she remembered working for Alex, or as he'd asked her to call him, just Alex. "Thank you," said the sudden day off as well. Miracles, indeed. After thinking about it, Kelly chatted with her friends. Fortunately, they were not offended by the sudden canceled meetings and even offered to meet on Monday. One was on maternity leave, and 2 of them had per diem duty. Not until Tuesday. What a wonderful day, Kelly thought. In the morning, Sophia woke her up. "Kelly, did your alarm clock go off?" she said after knocking, walking into her daughter's room. "Mom, it's my day off. I worked yesterday." Sophia suddenly squinted suspiciously. "Are you okay?" "Yes, Mom." Kelly sat up and smiled. "Have a good day, and you too, daughter." Kelly let herself lie there for another half hour after her mother left. Then she got up. It was strange how quickly life changed. Yesterday morning she was cursing her job and her boss, and today she was cheerful and happy and had no bad feelings for him. However, how long will it last? What was the use of guessing, though? She realized she'd been acting wrong. For some reason, after Sunday, Kelly had a strange confidence that he wouldn't fire her, which meant she wouldn't take his jokes anymore and would respond if he tried to say anything. "I see the day off." "Good for you," the chief said. When she went into his bedroom in the morning as usual, she wasn't even that late. Kelly glanced at her watch. She'd come in 1 minute late. "You look good too," she replied. "I was afraid no one would agree to change you, feed you, and tuck you in without me. And I'll be in the chair tonight." A cold corpse poked the chief. But Kelly noted that angry or displeased with her impertinence, he did not look. "My sister helped me," he replied. "Or did you think I'd be kind enough to take you straight home?" "I just didn't think so," Kelly replied honestly. When they were going up in the elevator, the chief asked, "So why are you late?" "I was at the cafe with my girlfriends last night." "Good for you." Kelly raised her eyebrows in surprise. "What?" asked Alex. "I'm certainly a log of material, like you and Thomas discussed yesterday. But hanging out with friends I can understand." "We didn't discuss that," Kelly said. "But when you were walking in the garden, it was about me talking about you." She didn't deny it. They took a familiar table in the restaurant, and the chef moved the menu to her. "I'm sure you didn't have time for breakfast today." Kelly blushed, and how did he know? Were her eyes hungry or something? That the chief looked up. "Don't know what to choose. Or is your head hungover and not thinking straight?" Kelly blushed. "Oh, young people, here we are in your time." The waiter came over. "Order for the young lady," said Alex. "Chicken soup, bacon sandwich, green salad, and a big glass of orange juice." "What's with all that?" Kelly was indignant. Not to argue with the boss, authoritatively stated he, and continued, "By the way, it's all the same to me. I'm tired of chewing on this mush." Kelly looked reproachfully at him. "Button, you have very beautiful eyes, but even such a look will not make me change my mind," said Alex. "I'm in a good mood today, so let's keep it." "That's what I said to Kelly with pleasure." He grinned. The food came quickly. And just as quickly, Kelly was convinced how right the chief had been. For one thing, she really was hungry. It seemed like yesterday, she and the girls had eaten almost nothing. In the second place, headache, fatigue, and a state of total sluggishness went away with every spoonful of soup and sip of juice. Out of the corner of her eye, she watched Alex. He was eating unaided and at almost the same speed as Kelly. I wonder if he realizes it, or if I told him, he'd freak out and his hands would start shaking. She didn't dare test her theory. For once he looks and acts like a normal person. After breakfast, Kelly had some free time. Alex went to work with Christina. Good morning, the one said, running into the office as the weekend wore on. Thank you. Nothing to do. Kelly went to the library again. This time, she felt braver, and even dared to pick up the rare collector's editions and leaf through them. Holding such expensive books was both scary and pleasurable. Both scary and pleasant. They smelled of expensive paper, were pleasant to the touch, and the content is the same as in the cheap ones. Kelly suddenly thought. The same letters and the same words. You're overpaying for the cover. Christina found it at the library. We're done, she announced cheerfully. Looks like you have some unscheduled work today, huh? What kind of work? Kelly was surprised. Our master's stick. I thought you said you were good at it. Kelly shrugged. Yeah, I'm certified. Not a lot of practice, but she was confident enough to do it once. For some reason, Kelly was worried. It was strange. She had already washed and dressed the chief many times without experiencing anything. A massage, at least a therapeutic one, is not such an intimate thing. Come on, Button. Surprise me, said Alex, lying already on the massage on the table. No promises, Kelly replied. I'm not a professional, monsieur. Just don't break what's left, and I will already be pleasantly surprised. Ouch, he shrieked loudly. There's a muscle in that spot, Kelly said. But that's okay. I got over it quickly. He laughed softly. Someone in a fighting mood today got the hint. Lying still, getting a massage. She wondered how she hadn't noticed before that he looked generally good for his condition. Of course, there were several large and small scars on the back of my legs and shoulders. Some were clearly stitches from the surgery, and others were apparently left over from wounds that had appeared after the accident. But his body didn't look as decrepit and lethargic as the other partially or completely paralyzed patients she'd seen when she'd finished with his back. Kelly moved gingerly to his legs, and here clearly felt the muscles. Not like those of athletes, of course, but quite palpable. It felt good. Suddenly, the chief's voice came up. You definitely have talent, don't you? I never wanted to go into massage. It takes a lot of strength, Kelly replied. And carrying the paralyzed to the hospital takes a little. Kelly grinned, acknowledging his point. I haven't had time to think about it. You have time now. You must have planned what you're going to be doing in 10 or 20 years, right? I don't think that before going to sleep, falling asleep, you see yourself coming to this apartment in 30 years to still wash and carry my body. If you pay the same, why not? So it's all about the money? Asked Alex. At the moment, yes. Will you buy something with it? Kelly was silent. Why did she even have to answer his questions? I don't want to talk about it. Finally, she said, and we should roll you onto your back. I want to stretch your legs and feet some more. He rolled over. As she pointed out, almost without her help, so engrossed in the conversation, Kelly continued the massage, trying to ignore his curious gaze. What if we play a game now? Asked Alex. A game? Perplexed, Kelly asked. Yes, question for question. Kelly frowned. I can ask you any question. Kelly felt him squirm. Yes, but I'll go first. Okay, then the question is the same. Why do you work so hard? Where does the money go? The man inquired. To pay off a debt. What debt? That's the second question, Kelly remarked. He laughed. Okay, I'll take your question for the first time. You are purposely being the ultimate rascal and bore with the nurses and caregiver. Yes and no, Alex replied. How is that not understood, Kelly? That's the second question, Kelly. For a long time. My turn, said Alex. What's the debt? Where did it come from? How long have you been paying it? That's 3 questions at once. Then you can ask me 3 questions too. That's fine, the girl nodded. The debt was left over from my father. He wasn't Robert, and he lost a lot of money. Ran away. No one knows where he is, and the debt went to his family, which is us. This happened when you were 16. Alex asked. Kelly nodded. My mom worked 2 jobs to support my brother and me, and to pay at least enough to keep us out of debt, she said. Then I started working, and now my brother is working part-time. So you've been living for 8 years, paying off the debt of your absconding father, the man said thoughtfully. She nodded again. How much more do you have left to pay? According to my calculations, if you do not fire me, a couple more years. He whistled my business. Say, was it my turn to interrupt his Kelly? I'm not gonna make up 10 questions. Just tell me why you treat me and others the way you do. Usually, humans as inferior beings. She heard him take a deep, heavy breath. It isn't. I don't consider you or your work unworthy. Though I agree, it's hard to deny that I'm being a jerk. I won't deny it at all. Kelly said seriously. Oh, Button. My name is Kelly. He sighed. I'm sorry, can I call you Kelly? The girl made a deliberately long pause, carefully applying the middle part of the foot, and finally said, May I thank you? As for your question, yes, I do. First of all, because apparently I think I have the right to do it. I mean, if you don't like the patient, leave. Besides, when a person hates you, they can't feel sorry for you. Kelly lowered his legs and stood beside him, looking into his eyes. You don't make me feel sorry for you, nor do I hate you. Thank you. Regarding the second one, it's only today, the girl added. He laughed. I'll keep that in mind. I suggest we continue our fascinating conversation over lunch. In the meantime, I'll do some more work. They had lunch together as well. Kelly, she didn't realize at what point, but the chief ordered food for her as well. Truthfully, she was a little embarrassed. The girl had eaten with Christina before, and now all of a sudden she was eating with the chief. What would she think? However, Christina must be used to everything here. When do you only have time to live? Asked Alex. Deftly wields a knife and fork. Well, to live, go on dates, meet with girlfriends. And what else do girls your age do? From what you told Thomas yesterday, you don't have a lot of free time. I don't go out much with my girlfriends. Probably hadn't been out in 6 months before last night. And Kelly's date got me thinking. I can't remember the last time I went out on a date. But you were in a relationship. What kind of questions are these? The girl was indignant. And anyway, what about the rule that we ask one question at a time? All right, all right. He conciliatory raised up his hands with the cutlery clutched in them. Your question. What happened with you and your wife? There was a resounding clatter. The fork and knife fell to the floor. Kelly looked at them in surprise, then looked at Alex's face. He darkened, lowered his eyes to his plate. But she cheated on me. I found out about it, left home, and got into an accident. While I was in the hospital, we divorced. I never spoke to her again. His hands were trembling. I think he even started to sit up unsteadily. Did you love her a lot? Kelly asked. He smiled bitterly. At the time, I thought I did. Now I don't know whether I loved her or an image in my imagination that didn't exist in real life. He finally looked up at Kelly. Now let's talk about your personal life. Tell me about it. Kelly blushed. There's not much to tell. I dated a man in college. He was my teacher for a long time, almost 3 years. Kelly answered. Was he married? No, divorced. Why didn't it work out? Asked Alex. She shrugged. He got involved with a new freshman. Oh, how? Loved him very much, the girl admitted. Do you still love him? No. And you've never wanted to go out with anyone since? I told myself not to think about it. I put my life on hold until I paid my father's debt. And then what? What kind of life? I haven't thought about it yet, mumbled Kelly. That's an interesting position. As if things were different for you. What is it you don't understand, Alex? Kelly pressed her lips together. No, she could definitely overreact now. She'd already gone too deep into his wounds. He wouldn't forgive her for that. But what have you got to lose that you don't live your own life? Come on, really. Alex was surprised. Really, you don't try to establish contacts with people around you. Everyone for you. As if disposable, who can be easily replaced if necessary. I don't know how you communicate with your family. But if it's the same way you did with Thomas yesterday, it's to their credit that you're still surrounded by them." He looked at her with wide-open eyes, and Kelly had no way of knowing whether the pain or hatred reflected there. "And you hardly go on dates either." "Yeah," he grinned sarcastically. "Except if you notice, Button, I can't even walk." She flared up. "You know exactly what I mean. And probably better than I do. You know that people who are in a worse position than you do not lose heart and find love. Except that you've given up on yourself. You've been hurt badly, and you've put a shell of rudeness around yourself. And you hung on to your unpaid paternal debt and covered yourself with it, postponing life until God knows when I had no choice," Kelly resented. "Everybody has one. And what's the interesting thing about leaving your mother and younger brother?" asked the girl. "Not only to go to the panel, Kelly to sell a kidney." With bitterness continued the one. "Or rob a bank. Don't go overboard. It's all right." You were yelling really loud. I was scared. It was Christina who looked in. "More than cold," the chief replied. "Lunch is over. I think I have a trainer's class coming up." He rolled away from the table and into the hallway. Kelly remained seated with her face flaming with anger. How dare he say that? What does he even know about me? They spent the rest of the day in sullen silence, exchanging only the necessary remarks. "See you tomorrow," Kelly heard her, leaving the bedroom after putting him to bed for tomorrow. The chief said she was closing the door. The next week went strangely. On the one hand, they hardly spoke at all, only out of necessity. On the other hand, Alex was like a switch. He didn't make jokes. He didn't call her the pain button. She didn't know what to think. Until a week ago, she would have been happy that the chief had stopped bugging her. However, after she became convinced that he could be an interesting, intelligent, and fun conversationalist, the girl began to miss such communication. "What's going on with you and the chief?" Christina asked her once. Kelly shrugged her shoulders. "Nothing. It's weird. I thought you two seemed to be getting along. But I'm not gonna quit, if that's what you're mumbling about, Kelly. I realized that a long time ago," the assistant smiled. "But it's like you've started to have human contact. We're communicating normally." Kelly started to get angry like a nurse and a patient. "I'm sorry," Christina said. "I'm not implying anything, if that's what you mean. It just seems to me that he's changed lately, become more open and human, or something." "Fine, if that's the case," Kelly muttered sullenly. "But I had nothing to do with that." "Oh well," Christina replied. But she didn't continue the conversation. Friday night, Kelly asked at dinner. Her mother and brother had plans for tomorrow. They looked at her in surprise. "I don't think so far," Sophia answered cautiously. "I have plans too," Tony said. "I need to work, of course, but it's not urgent. Then I suggest that tomorrow we all go out to the movies, for example." Mom and brother looked at each other. "Why?" Sophia said cheerfully. "That's a great idea. I don't remember when the three of us ever went out. I probably didn't know how to walk back then," Tony said. Everybody laughed. They didn't end up going to the movies, but they had a nice walk in Central Park and even rode the Ferris wheel together. After they had lunch at a local cafe, Tony suggested maybe a boat ride. "Let's do that." Kelly agreed. Sophia smiled. "I haven't been on a boat in about 25 years. The three of them sailed slowly on the big boat. Tony and Kelly took turns at the oars. The boat was light and easy to steer, and at one point, when they were in the middle of the river, Kelly closed her eyes, breathed in the fresh river air, and felt her lungs and mind slowly filling with the knowledge of life. She had probably never felt so light and free, as if there was no paternal duty. And she and her mother and brother can live a normal, quiet life. Sophia can work as much as she wants, not at the limit of her strength. Perhaps their mother will even quit her job, buy a country house and go there to grow flowers. And Tony will go to university, start studying and enjoy student life. And she, Kelly, will continue to work for Alex and go on dates. What if she gets married and her husband is against her courting another man? That's where her thoughts got mixed for some reason. The next week followed the same pattern until Wednesday's massage session. The masher never showed up, but Kelly was being paid well for her new responsibility, which was fine with her. The chief said you'd take Saturday off for overtime. Sure, Kelly replied. We'll go to the spa again. Did you miss your massage? Sure, Alex, no. Alas, we're just going to visit my little sister. Oh, great. She has a beautiful house. I'm sure you'll love it. It's nice to think you care about my experience. But I said great because I'm glad you're finally coming out of your shell. The girl remarked ironically. He laughed. Just like that, we were back to the conversation of 2 weeks ago. At this rate, we'll get a date with you. Kelly smiled. Interesting about you. Does that mean he'll go? And I'll go? Or with you together? Damn, why am I even thinking about this? A date is good, Kelly said neutrally, carefully constructing the phrase so that it didn't commit her to anything. The chief watched her face intently. His attentive gray eyes seemed to gurgle, pouring in through her. Goodbye. That's fine, he replied. From that day on, they began talking again on various subjects. They discussed the weather, who liked what food, or who did well in school. Kelly was surprised to learn that Alex had grown up in an ordinary family, that his parents were a school teacher and a factory engineer. And for some reason, she had always imagined that he was a hereditary businessman, and his parents were some kind of owners of factories and steamships. Alex was surprised when Kelly told him that she had been a bully in junior high school, and Sophia was often called to school. I thought you were that girl on the first desk with a thick braid, who raises her hand at every question and reminds if the teacher forgot to assign homework. What a terrible opinion you have of me, laughed the girl. I was. Only I sat in the second batch. I studied quite well, but at home I often forgot to do it myself. Saturday at 10:00 a.m., they arrived at a big, beautiful house. It couldn't be called flashy, luxurious, more like just big and cozy. The walls were painted white, a small apple orchard and a beautiful veranda where a long table was already standing. Hi guys. They were met by a young pretty girl with dark long hair in a simple light-colored sundress. Looking at her, one could immediately recognize the resemblance to her brother. Kim leaned over and, despite a weak attempt at resistance, kissed Alex on both cheeks. Then she walked over to Kelly and hugged her unexpectedly. It's nice to finally meet you, she said. Brother, I've been hearing all about you. No, I haven't, he protested. Oh, don't start. Kim waved her hand in his direction, and Kelly took his arm and dragged him into the house. Is it okay that I'm in the stroller? Alex asked. You have a powerful motor. You'll make it. Carefree turned to his sister. He gave a loud sigh, but drove off. Alex and Kim's parents met them at the house. Mom, Dad, I'd like you to meet Kelly. Kim introduced the girl. Kelly, the chief's mother, finally approached her. My name is Helen. Nice to meet you. And I'm Kelly. Adam introduced herself to her husband. Nice to meet you. How do they even know about me? Kelly thought, responding to the hug and handshake. It's as if they were expecting me more than Alex. Indeed, the parents greeted Kelly first, and then they turned their attention to their son. Did they notice? He said, I'm here too, but not at Archie's, said the mother. Kiss him on the cheek. Everything's ready. Let's go out on the veranda, said the father. On the veranda, Kelly still met Kim's husband, Kim, a nice young man, and their daughter, 5-year-old Emily. Kim's husband was also aware of who Kelly was. The little girl, on the other hand, rushed over to Alex and jumped into her uncle's lap without a bit of embarrassment. Uncle Alex, she squealed. Hello, Button, said he, and smiling, patted his niece on the head. Catching Kelly's gaze at that moment, he averted his eyes in embarrassment. So his Button wasn't always a swear word. So, Dragonfly, get down with a reproachful look, said Grandma. And in fact, everyone sit down at the table. Strangely, Kelly suddenly realized that she was at ease and comfortable with Alex's family. It's not clear how he could be so gloomy with such a nice family. They treated her as if she were not a girl, but at least a friend of the chief. Yeah, Kelly, tell me, where did you work before? They asked her. Kelly, let's get you another salad. Kelly, it's not blowing. At some point, it was time for dessert, and Kelly volunteered to help her wife. As they stood in the kitchen, she asked the chief's sister if she could ask you a strange question. Sure, Kim replied, deftly slicing into their wine pie. Why don't you all have that attitude over there? What do you mean? Kim seemed genuinely surprised. Kelly blushed. Well, I'm just a nurse. I understood. Kim put the knife aside and smiled. Not just a nurse, I understand. It's, you know a lot about him. What happened in his life? Kelly blushed. I know a few things. But after the accident, he changed a lot. Kim's face became very serious all of a sudden. It was like I saw a different person. And I know he was completely insufferable to the other caregivers and nurses. And I'm sure he was to you, too, Kelly said, wanting to say something. But Kim held up her hand. Hold on. But I don't know why. He's changed, and it's like I recognize my brother again. She smiled again. So how are we supposed to feel about you? Kelly couldn't find anything to say to that, so she just helped her wife carry the pie out to the veranda. When they returned, she saw the chief glance at her. He'll think I'm gossiping about him again, Kelly thought. Though what about last time? What about this time? That's just the way it was. The evening went well, cozy family style. They played crocodile, sang songs with guitar, and got ready to go home only when it was time for Emily's daughter Kim to go to bed already in the car. The chief said I can also drop you off on the way home. Then who takes care of you before bedtime? Kelly asked. I don't suppose you're expecting anyone tonight. She immediately said no. What if he met someone? And she said dismissively, it's understandable that no one will come to your place at night. But the chief answered calmly, no, I'm not expecting anyone. I'm just worried that tomorrow you did not sleep because of me. Tomorrow is Sunday anyway, the girl answered. I don't know. Maybe you have a date in the morning. I don't have a date. Kelly suddenly blushed. She hoped it wouldn't be noticeable in the darkness of the car. She also thought the chief seemed to let out a quiet sigh of relief when he said, maybe you could go on a date with me. She looked up at him in surprise. Not literally. He immediately started making excuses like a frightened boy. It's just that I have 2 tickets to the theater tomorrow, and I wanted to go with Thomas, and he can't. I wondered if you didn't have plans and you wanted to go. I really do, Kelly said hastily. And then she added, I love the theater, and I haven't been in a while. Great. I could see the wrinkles on Alex's forehead right away. Then I'll pick you up at 6. Okay. After that, they as if tried to get away from each other quickly, so that everyone could be alone with his thoughts. They quickly finished all their hygiene procedures, and Kelly noticed that the chief's hand and footwork had deteriorated again. Though all day with his relatives, he hardly needed her help. She was even ready to swear that she saw him shuffling his feet to more comfortably seat his niece, who periodically gathered on his lap. And here came the unexpected regression again. She sighed, adjusted her blanket, and headed for the exit. Good night, Kelly. Good night, Chief. It's not a date, by no means a date. He's just got an extra ticket. Looking at herself in the mirror and mixing her few outfits one by one, Kelly kept repeating those words to herself. It didn't help that the excitement wouldn't go away. All the more so because it was impossible to find a suitable outfit. It had also been a long time since she had gone shopping. There was only an hour left, and she had absolutely nothing for the theater. The most she could wear was to go on duty at the hospital. The newest clothes she bought herself a year or 2 ago, jeans and a Tolstoy. The dress, on the other hand, they're about 5 years old, if not more. They had long since gone out of fashion and looked completely unpresentable all. I'm not going anywhere, she thought. I'll say I got poisoned. But she suddenly pictured Alex's distraught face, and it made her even sadder. She really wanted to go herself. She was interrupted by the sudden ringing of the doorbell. Tony's buddies must be here, or one of her mom's friends. I figured it was a girl. Daughter, it's for you. It was Sophia's voice already. Kelly ran out into the hallway, where she saw a smiling Christina with a big bag in her hands. Christina, is she the one? The girl answered. She's playing fairy godmother. Where is your room? Surprised, Kelly could only wave her hand in the right direction. Christina nodded and walked confidently to her room. Kelly, who is that? Sophia asked. Christina, we work together. Christina, will you have tea? Shouted her mom towards Kelly's room. Thank you very much. I will, but later, answered the girl from there. Wait, Mom, said Kelly. She went into her room and closed the door. I don't understand, Kelly admitted. What's going on? Christina put her big bag on the bed, rested her arms at her sides, and asked businesslike, Are you going to the theater with the chief today? Kelly blushed. Yes, but it's not what you thought I thought. Smiling slyly, the girl asked. What is it, a date? Kelly said firmly. And it wasn't. The chief wanted to go with Thomas, but he couldn't. Kelly, Christina interrupted her. Who do you think bought the tickets? Kelly realized it was you, of course. And believe me, please, no, Thomas, the chief was not going to the theater. In fact, I doubt Thomas knows what theater is. With all due respect, Kelly sank down on the bed. So, in a weak voice, she said, It turns out it's a date. Don't you want to? Careful. Christina asked. Kelly shrugged her shoulders. I think I do. Then I guess let's get ready then. There's not much time. Kelly opened her mouth when Christina, like a true modern fairy godmother, began pulling a bundle out of a large bag. First, she pulled out a simple but elegant and delicate blue dress. Christina said in an unobjectionable voice, The dress fit just right. How do you know my size? Kelly wondered. Experience. I worked as a young stylist's assistant. Oh, right. You sized up my uniform the first day. She remembered. Yes, I did. Then Christina pulled out the same elegant and delicate on thin bags black sandals. Kelly wasn't even surprised when they fit. So we have half an hour left. Christina looked at her watch. We still have time to do her hair and makeup. What's what? Sit down. Kelly obediently sat down. Christina took a critical look at her face and hair. It's perfect, she said. We'll let it down, put a little more in. And makeup will be the lightest, just to emphasize the eyes. Why are you doing this? Kelly asked in bewilderment. While Christina tinkered with her hair, she shrugged. I just want to do a good deed. I've known the chief long enough. I've gotten to know you, she mused. So, Kelly couldn't take it anymore. That's it. You can take it from there. Almost done. Kelly looked in the mirror. It was both her and not her. Christina hadn't made any drastic changes that made her unrecognizable. Only the eyes were a little brighter, and the hair lay down, naturally and neatly. Thank you, Christina said to Kelly. You're amazing. Come on, it happens. Don't forget to invite me to the wedding. Screw the girl. Oh, you sound just like Chief Christina. There's a text on Kelly's phone. You'll be ready when you are. Come on out. We're downstairs, even 5 minutes early. Christina smiled. Then, with your permission, I'll stay here for 5 minutes so I don't run into the chief. Christina left the room. Sophia, where's your tea? I deserve 1 minute, Christina. Kelly sighed. She took one more look in the mirror and left the room. She caught the surprised looks of her mother. Surprisingly, neither of them said a word. I went cowardly, ventured Kelly, and sprinted out the door. Outside, she got into a familiar car. Oh, said the chief, you look amazing. Thank you. You too, said Kelly. Alex was indeed very good, smooth, shaved and in a black suit, and snow-white shirt on the car seat. Without the usual stroller, he looked like the most ordinary and yet very handsome man. I'd wonder who was helping him get ready, thought Kelly, Kim or Christina. And there was time here and there. The theater was full of people. However, a smiling man in a uniform immediately approached them and led them down a small hallway to a separate elevator. It turned out that their seats on the balcony, they took a comfortable box. The balcony had a great view of both the stage and the rest of the theater. Kelly gazed admiringly around the auditorium. "It's very beautiful here," she said. "What's beautiful?" the chief asked. She shrugged at all the decorations, the chandeliers and sets, the men and women. "The most beautiful woman here is you." Kelly blushed, but decided she would not let that go unanswered. "Then the most handsome man is you." "It's not nice to make jokes like that about a handicapped person," Alex said. "I'm not joking. And then you are not an invalid. I see that when you are in a good mood and not concentrating all on your actions, you perfectly control both hands and feet." He frowned in response, clenched his teeth, and looked at the stage. Now it was going to start. Oh shit. I'd hurt him, I realized, as if he was doing it on purpose. Surely if he could control his body, he'd be doing it. I'd have to think of a way to apologize. However, Kelly didn't come up with anything quickly, and a few minutes later, the play started, and there was definitely no time to talk. The last time Kelly had been to the theater was in high school. She'd enjoyed it then, though she'd been distracted by her classmates and the boys sitting in the back. Now she had the opportunity to immerse herself in the play. The only thing that distracted her was the proximity of Alex. She herself could not understand at what moment he, from the most hateful and nasty type in the world, turned into a man from the mere smell of which her heart pounded. At one particularly exciting moment, Kelly quietly awed and clenched her hands into fists. A second later, she felt the man's strong male fingers gently touch her wrist, slowly clench his fist, and intertwine with her fingers. That's how they sat for the rest of the play. And such a simple touch almost made her dizzy. She even stopped realizing what was happening on the stage, though she kept looking at it. When the applause sounded and they separated their hands, Alex asked, "Did you like it?" Kelly admitted very much. "I liked it a lot too." She nodded, not sure. And the play, or he says otherwise, they too were led down a secret corridor, escorted all the way to the car. Strangely, they barely spoke on the way home, only when there was only a short distance to go. "The chief says I didn't let you rest at all this weekend. If you want, take 2 days off. Will they be paid as if you were working?" "No," Kelly said hastily. "I'm not tired at all. On the contrary." She averted her eyes, hesitant to clarify what the opposite meant. He didn't ask. Suddenly, Kelly jumped up. "You're the first one to take me again." "Yeah, but then who are you?" "Don't worry about that. Sister will help." "Sister. So the main matchmakers are Christina and Kim." Kelly smiled. "What are you doing?" asked the chief. "Just thank you for a lovely evening." "Thank you." "The car stopped until tomorrow," said Kelly. "Until tomorrow," answered Alex and sighed as if he didn't want her to leave. The next week passed even more strangely, as if there was some mystery in the air that she knew about. The chief, and Christina, of course. But no one said anything out loud. The chief's assistant didn't even ask how the date had gone. She just smiled slyly. Kelly didn't know how to act now. On the one hand, they were holding hands. On the other hand, no one offered her anything, so she just continued to do her work, every now and then catching Alex's oddly warm gaze. They continued their communication in the same friendly manner, as if there was no hand-holding in the theater. Maybe I was just getting myself worked up, at times thought the girl. Well, he invited me to the theater. He got emotional, took my hand, and I was already making up my own ignorance from such thoughts came to my throat and incomprehensible bitterness, because no matter how much she did not want to deny it, she herself was becoming more and more attached to the chief every day. He was now also always in a good-natured mood, and nothing reminded her of the former rude manner of communication. But as he once asked me during a trip, "Are you still not going on dates? Do you want me to start going out?" Kelly asked. His face twitched painfully. "Honestly, not really." "Well, neither do I. They were silent for a few minutes. Then Kelly couldn't take it anymore. "What about you?" she asked. The chief made round eyes. "What am I doing here?" She was already pissed off. "Go on a date." "Only when with you," she exhaled noisily. "Are you joking, or are you being serious? Which answer would you like?" Kelly suddenly felt like hitting him with something heavy. After a short pause, he bit his lower lip and, without looking Kelly in the eye, asked, "Did you know I had a little house in the country?" "I didn't. I want to go there for the weekend," Alex said. "If you're not bored with me yet, and you're willing to take the overtime, I'd really like you to come with me." So this is bullshit again. It's like he's asking her to spend the weekend with him. But if that's the case, what the hell is a part-time job? Can't he just say it? Feeling my brain explode with contradictions, Kelly, as indifferent as possible, shrugged and said, "I never turned down overtime." He seemed pleased and upset at the same time. It was a deal. The little house turned out to be a big, luxurious, beautiful house. "Aha." That's all Kelly said when she stepped inside. "I'd live here all the time." "I'll think about your offer," the chief replied, moving past her to the back of the room. Kelly walked through the house, determined to get to know the servants. To her own surprise, she found no one here. "Are we the only ones here?" she asked in surprise. "Well, yes," said Alex, "if you're afraid that I'll start hitting on you." "Don't be afraid, you can easily escape." "Very funny," muttered the girl. "I'm serious. I think we can handle a couple days on our own. Christina's driver and the cleaning lady were here the day before. They're all set. I'm sure I can get through 2 days without the help of other people. I just didn't expect it from you." The chief shrugged his shoulders. "Thought you might want a vacation in the country. Of course, it's not exactly a vacation with me. But still, what are the plans? I can just show you the house for now." As they looked around the house, Kelly noted to herself that it too had been built or remodeled to suit Alex's needs. "This is my bedroom," said the man. "And the next door is the guest door where you can sleep." Kelly nodded. It was strange for her to imagine that for a few days they would be completely alone in this house. Of course, she wasn't afraid of him. It was a different feeling, more like anticipation or something. It was getting smaller and smaller. One could imagine them staying here to continue a purely working relationship. These thoughts made her cheeks start to blush again. "I suggest we start with a snack," Alex said. "The food in the refrigerator will be brought to the pool." "Okay," Kelly nodded. "What should I bring?" "Anything at your discretion." "Okay, it's up to you to trust." Kelly went into the kitchen. There was enough food for a whole company. Thinking, she took some meat, cheese, bread, fruit, and a bottle of white wine. "What the hell," she thought. "She'll take what she can get." Apparently Alex thought the same. Good choice. "Will there be glasses?" "Oh," said Kelly and ran back into the house. "Kelly," the chief stopped her. What did she turn around? "It's hot to change into a bathing suit. We'll swim." "I didn't bring a bathing suit." "Look in your bedroom," Alex advised. Christina should have packed something there. The girl frowned, but went to the bedroom. On the bed was a bag of things. Christina seemed to know more about this trip than I did. Among other things, she found a swimsuit almost identical to the one she wore at the Thomas Spa Center, also black and high-end. There were bags and other clothes. The silk fabrics especially caught Kelly's eye. Well, we'd have to find out later. Did Christina pack the bag on her own initiative, or had the chief given her a list? After changing her clothes, she went to the kitchen, and after a short search, she found tall crystal glasses on a thin stem. "Now that's different," Alex said. "Did you undress and climb over to the 6th lawn by yourself?" Kelly asked. He nodded. "How do you see? I think it would be nice if you started addressing me as you two." "It's a deal." Kelly poured the wine into a glass. We handed one to the chief. He took it, raised it, and smiled for a great weekend. A great weekend. After that, they lounged around on a chaise lounge for about half an hour and had a little snack. What if it's just the two of us these days? Kelly asked. What about the classes with the trainer? Massage therapists and all that? Alex shrugged. I'm sick of all that. It's okay if I miss a little bit, but I'll get a massage, Kelly said. I don't mind at all. In fact, I suggest we go for a swim now. Swimming is very useful in my condition. Kelly looked at him incredulously. We're sober for now, Alex said. There is a special descent to the pool. There are handrails for me there and in the water. I hold myself like a normal person. The last phrase decided everything. It was clear that swimming was not a way to seduce Kelly, but a way to feel on par with regular people. No problem, Kelly said. They went down to the pool, and indeed everything was so conveniently arranged that Kelly didn't even have to help the chief into the water. Alex lowered the handrails and swam in. Kelly was surprised to see how easily his arms and legs moved. At the opposite end of the pool, he turned around. What are you looking at? Swim over here. I'm no good. Swimming, Kelly said. Really? Come on. He went back to her. Teach you how you do. How do you envision that? I'm good in the water. I can hold you too, come on. He was quite steady on his feet. He just helped himself with his hands. What do we do? Kelly asked. Lie down in my arms, said Alex. Good. She carefully lay down on the outstretched arms internally, being ready to be submerged in the water. But that didn't happen. The chief held her securely, moving her arms and legs, he said. After all, Kelly had learned to swim before, and now, after a few tries, she was able to do it. Oh, I'm a good teacher, said a pleased Alex. Let's try to swim together. After a while, Kelly suggested. Let's swim together for a while. Alex was always beside her and didn't take his eyes off her. This is the best kind of therapy, he said. Finally, Kelly smiled. This is the best work, she replied. Climbing out of the pool, they were about an hour later. Kelly went to get towels. Wine? Asked Alex. Yes. By the way, Thomas says hi to you, the chief said casually. Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure. Him too. I will. He wrinkled his face as if he tasted something unpalatable. What? Kelly was surprised. What do you mean? You have a face like you're uncomfortable, the girl said. I'm not. He took a big gulp. That's what Kelly said, emptied the glass and reached for the bottle. That's how the woman said, Alex, break, or you'll get fired. He smiled and set his glass down for a refill. Not a chance. You're the best nurse in the world, and generally the best thing that's happened to me this year. Kelly blushed, and the hand pouring wine for the chief trembled slightly. Are you joking again? She asked. What do you mean? In a literal sense, I often do not understand at what moments you speak seriously, and at what moments you joke. Ah, in my opinion, very logical, said Alex. I've been courting you since the theater. I thought you regretted calling me there. He frowned and looked at her carefully. How did that occur to you? Because in the theater I thought something had happened. But then for the next week you acted like nothing had happened, the girl explained. Alex sighed, and you didn't realize what that had to do with anything. Kelly blushed. Of course I did. Because you thought you felt something for a regular nurse, and then you realized that she wasn't your equal. And you were ashamed of your impulse, the girl muttered. No, Kelly. He looked at her with pain in his eyes. Did you really think that? What else was I supposed to think? He sighed and rubbed his nose. Kelly, take a serious look at yourself. A beautiful, young, healthy girl. Now look at me. He looked over his body in disgust. A man who can't get out of bed without help. First of all, said Kelly, you're being too hard on yourself. I've already said that there are plenty of people with more serious illnesses who live full lives and don't bury themselves alive. Secondly, we've already discussed how your body works. That's the thing. I don't know how it works. Alex screamed. Sometimes I feel almost healthy, and sometimes I can't move a finger. I have no control over it. Kelly shook her head. Then why this weekend? Why stay alone with me if you don't believe anything is possible between us? He smiled sadly and looked into her eyes, because he was tired of fighting himself, because it's not enough for me to see you only at work as my nurse. I want you to touch me as more than just a patient, and I want to touch you too. After saying that, he slowly reached out and touched her cheek carefully, with the very tips of his fingers. Kelly lifted her hand and brought their palms together. I like spending time with you too, she said, and even if we both haven't figured out what we want to do with it yet, I suggest we try to just enjoy this weekend. It was a deal. As it started to get dark, they moved into the house. Kelly lit the fireplace under Alex's guidance, and the house was immediately warm and cozy. I haven't spent time like this in a long time, he said thoughtfully. Probably never at all, Kelly admitted. Then they cooked dinner, or rather, heated it up, and drank hot cocoa. It's not raining enough, Alex said thoughtfully. Fireplace and cocoa? Kelly asked. Yes. They went to bed late. In the evening after a shower, Kelly helped the boss to get into bed. Are you going to wash up now too? He asked. Yes, I guess you can come back to my place later. Asked Alex. I want to show you something. Okay. Kelly washed her face, changed into a shirt and foam, because she realized that she hadn't taken anything from her clothes, and went back to the bedroom. When she remembered that she had promised to look in on Alex before bed, she decided not to change her clothes and only smelled denser in the hollow of her night robe. Carefully knocked on the next door, in case she was already asleep. Come in. She came in. You said you had something to show me. Take it. He nodded at the other half of the bed. You can get under the covers. It won't take long. Kelly laughed, but obediently lay down beside him, snuggling under the blanket. Here's a look. He showed her some old photos and videos on his phone that showed beautiful mountains, waterfalls, and flowering trees. What are these? Kelly asked. Do you like it? I love it. It's where we used to go on vacation when we were kids, said Alex. It's beautiful. Yes, he put the phone away and looked at Kelly. I want to go there with you. Her cheeks flushed. Okay. In a husky voice, she said. You'll stay with me tonight? Yes. Kelly, cautiously, moved closer. Lie down. Alex whispered softly. Kelly nestled herself on his chest and felt warm arms gently embrace her. Kelly took a deep breath, rested her head on his chest, lay still and heard his heart beating fast. They fell asleep almost simultaneously. She was having some kind of strange dream. It was as if she were walking through a large, dark forest. At first it seemed like the forest was just dark. Then she realized that the forest was black because it had burned. Kelly could even smell the smell of burned wood. Where is Alex? Suddenly she thought. We fell asleep together. That's how I ended up in this forest in the first place. She looked around. There were only black trunks and the smell of burning wood growing stronger. Kelly called out to her from far away. I'm here. She tried to answer, but for some reason her voice wouldn't listen. Kelly. The voice came closer. We should go to that voice. It's Alex. He's out here in the woods somewhere. She has to find him and save him. Kelly. The shouting came closer, almost in her ear. She's going to answer it now. What is that strong smoke smell that gives you a headache? We've got to get out of these woods. Someone's coughing. Someone's suffocating in this forest. Kelly. A sharp pain burned her right cheek and she opened her eyes. There was the smell of smoke in her nose. Her throat was tearing up with bitterness. She seemed to be the one coughing. Slowly, consciousness returned. Kelly, can you hear me? She saw Alex. His face was dirty with black spots for some reason. Yeah, I hear what happened. A house is on fire. She looked up and saw that she was lying by the pool. And the house they had spent the entire previous day in was on fire. Flames were already bursting out of the windows, burning part of the roof, and a few sparks fell directly into the singing pool, turning into black coals. We forgot to put out the fireplace. He shook his head. No, there are safety systems in there. It wouldn't have caught fire. Then what happened? The girl asked. I don't know. We should call the fire department. I already did. Wait a minute. Kelly's suddenly starting to get it. You're the one who pulled me out. He nodded. Well, there was no way you wanted to wake up. But how? How did you do it? He smiled. I guess I was afraid of losing you. Were you on your feet? Kelly asked. Yes, he answered. Not firmly, but standing. She smiled and rolled over onto her back. It's a shame about the house, said Kelly. Oh, come on, Alex replied. We'll build another one. At that moment they heard sirens. Kelly saw that besides the firemen, the police had arrived at the house. Alex said that the fireplace could not have caught fire. Then why was there a fire? The girl thought. They ran up to them. In addition to the firemen and the police, there were also representatives of the security service. You can recognize them right away. Huge, pumped up in suits with serious faces. They were helped to their feet. Alex, how are you? He nodded seriously in order. Kelly, you're fine. It was already addressed to her. Kelly nodded in surprise and was taken to the side. She saw firemen running to put out the house. She saw police officers, and they were discussing something. She saw Alex weakly standing on her feet, leaning on the shoulder of her security chief. After that, the girl was taken away and put into a big black car. Still later, Alex approached her. Kelly, to spend the night tonight at my sister's house. She nodded. The man frowned and scratched his forehead. There are some things we need to figure out. You can stay at my sister's for now. And no contact with anyone but her family. We'll let your mom and your brother know. Okay. Cell phone rings. What about you? She was kind of scared of her impulse, but she realized how important it was for her to know that Sasha was going to be okay. He smiled, kissed her cheek, and hugged her tightly. I'll be there later. An equally serious man in a suit drove Kelly to the now familiar house where she was greeted by a worried Kim. How are you, my good girl? She asked Kelly. I'm fine. The girl hugged her. Let's go inside. Tea or coffee? Probably tea. What happened? Asked Kim, handing her a mug with a hot drink. Alex didn't say much. Kelly shrugged. We were asleep. I woke up on the street. She raised her head and looked at Kim. Alex pulled my ear out. Kim sat down on the chair, pulled it out. You mean on you? Kelly nodded. I don't want to guess, but when I left, he was on his feet. Wow. Kim cupped her head with her hands. I don't know why the house caught fire, Kelly said. Alex said it couldn't have come from the fireplace. Kim nodded her head. No, it couldn't. We have one at our house. It has a special security system. I guess we'll find out when my brother gets back. In the meantime, let's get you to bed. She led Kelly into the guest bedroom. Dawn was already breaking outside the window. The girl thought she wouldn't be able to sleep a wink, but she soon fell asleep. She woke up to a light touch. Sorry. Alex was sitting on the bed and stroking her head. She got up abruptly and hugged him. I was worried about you. Why would you be worried about me? He grinned. My only problem is that it's hard to stay on my feet when I'm not used to it. And your house burned down. Kelly reminded him, not rekindling the hug. It's insured, by the way. Did you get any sleep? Kelly, pulling away and giving him a not-so-subtle look. So what do you suggest? A morning walk. He laughed. It was almost lunchtime. But I have another suggestion. There's an interesting show you can stay and see. I'm predicting it'll be on in a few hours. I don't get it. I wish I could tell you more, but alas, that would be uninteresting. By the way, how are your acting skills? Kelly shrugged her shoulders, except that she'd done plays in school. Would you like to do some acting tonight? Go ahead. It's no big deal. Just make a serious and mournful face. A few hours later, a gorgeous red car pulled up to Kim's house. A tall, slender blonde woman got out. She walked confidently up to the house and unceremoniously opened the door. Wow, said Kim, and quickly, she and Kelly were drinking tea. The blonde was watching the kitchen. I don't have much time, said the girl and sat down on the couch. Have you come to offer condolences? Asked Kim. The blonde girl nodded. Condolences, but I came to get my own. You got yours in the divorce. Lola flashed and Snow White smile. I am very familiar with the contents of my ex-husband's will. According to it, I get half of his business. Is it cold? Kim asked. Maybe you're wondering what happened to him. Died without a care in the world, replied the girl. Saw it on the news. I'm not interested in the rest. Yes, he burned to death in his house in a fire. That's too bad, nodded the blonde. I think it was arson. Lola raised her eyebrows. But wow, what kind of passion? Just what did that have to do with it? Lola, there was a rough male bass. Are you accusing him of attempted murder? Lola asked quietly. Yes, answered Alex, coming out of the next room with the police officers. Lola almost fell off the couch. You're walking, you're alive. But how? I am. She fell silent. Alex watched her face the sharp lines, the cheekbones of her chin against which you could frolic. A thin, predatory nose with nostrils flared with impotent anger and cold, dead eyes. Could he ever have thought her beautiful? When Lola was taken away, Kelly asked why you wanted me to see your ex-wife. First of all, so that you could better understand what was going on in my life, Alex said. And secondly, so you don't think of jealousy of my past in the future. There's nothing to be jealous of. I put Kim in. I didn't like her from the first day. Alex laughed. I remember. And Kelly, I liked Kelly from the first time I saw her. Kelly blushed. Alex hugged her and kissed her cheek. It turns out that Lola set the house on fire. Either her or her current husband, Alex said. They mopped up the money Lola had gotten in the divorce. She's a successful model, Kelly said. And her husband seems to be a photographer. Couldn't they have made money? Alex squinted. How do you know that? Kelly blushed. Thomas told her. Oh, that Thomas, Alex sighed. He meant well for you, and I'm grateful to him for that. If it weren't for him, I'd probably still be acting like the last one with you, Kim interrupted her brother, pointing to Emily playing on the floor. Anyway, Alex continued. I haven't found out the details yet, but Lola and her husband moved to another country, and apparently they had no luck with their careers there. They also got into debt. Anyway, they needed money fast. And then Lola remembered that she was in her ex-husband's will, Kim added. I can't understand how she knew that you never got around to changing the will. Alex shrugged. I suppose that she had once made a very close acquaintance with my notary, he said. That slippery fellow must have told her that I hadn't changed anything yet. How awful, Kelly said, hiding her face on Sasha's chest. He responded by pulling her tighter against his chest. All's well that ends well. That's for sure. Kim sighed with relief. The nasty ex-wife is punished, and the happy and positive characters found happiness in each other, just like in a fairy tale. Honestly, Alex kissed Kelly on the temple, and the main character healed him both spiritually and physically. And it's all thanks to you, my princess. Kelly raised her head and looked at him. I never would have thought my life would change so much when I went to get a job working for the nasty rich guys to pay off my father's debt. The girl grinned nervously. Speaking of which, Alex slightly dropped his arms and looked into her eyes. I hope you won't swear too much, but I took the liberty of paying off your debt last week, which I'm sorry. I guess you wanted to be strong and independent. But since we're together, Kelly shook his head. I would have paid it off anyway, working for you. I've long since gotten used to handling everything on my own. And yet there were tears in her eyes. I've waited so long for this moment, Kelly admitted. And now it's here. And at the same time, I really have a happy new life. It couldn't be better.